Come in, Councillor Taylor.
Good morning, everybody.
So you turn your volume down a bit. Maybe just a shout. We're good to go. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the City Delivery Committee meeting of Monday, the 7th of April, 2025. Quickly, health and safety. If the alarm sounds, please make your way quietly to the nearest emergency exit, and the assembly point is across the road from the Regional Council building. Please be aware that this meeting is being live streamed and the video will be publicly available on YouTube. Just remind members, if you could please remember to speak clearly into your microphones and only one speaker at a time for clarity. And now's a good time for everyone to turn off their mobile phones. I'll just start quickly with a wee opening prayer. With the serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can not change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So just chose that from the point of view. We are obviously at a time now, we're out the annual consultation, there's a lot of change with us as a new council, and I thought it was a apt reminder of our collective wisdom that'll be guiding and shaping the city, the decisions and the discussions and debates we have around the table. Always fully aware of, yes, what we can change and influence for the better of the city, and those things that we need to accept the will of our fellow members. And I'm sure today there'll be times when we don't all agree, but we'll come to what we believe is the best collective outcome for the city. So if we keep the wisdom in mind, I think we'll have a good meeting. Also, just as deputy chair of this meeting, in accordance with the terms of reference, I, as the co-chair of this committee, chairing this meeting today. The minutes will reflect that the chairperson vacated the chair to enable the deputy chair to chair the meeting. The chair, deputy mayor, will participate in the meeting unless they declare a conflict of interest in an item, in which case they would not participate or vote on that item. So just an item of clarity there. And now on to important welcome to the Tangata Whenua member, Jackie Rolleston-Steed. Welcome here for your first meeting with us. It's been a while taken a while to get the Tangata Whenua members on board, but it's great to see that I have another person from Bethlehem alongside. But yeah, welcome you here today. Very warm welcome. I'm looking forward to your input today and right throughout the term. And if you'd like to, just open the floor to you to say a few words.
Morena koutou, ko Jackie Rolleston-Steed tōku ingoa, he uri tēnei no tauranga moana, no ngā iwi ahau Ngāti Rangi Nui, Ngāti Rangi me Ngāti Pūkenga hoki, ko Rolleston tōku ingoa whānau. So kia ora everyone, lovely to be on this platform on the standing committee alongside you guys. A great opportunity to have a tangata whenua voice in here, as you may have recognised or picked up in my brief opening that I whakapapa tū tauranga moana to all three iwi. So it is wonderful to be sitting at the table. We had like a nice soft launch workshop on Thursday, so that was nice way to kind of ease in and meet the fellow members from the committee. Now also my background was with the Regional Bay of Plenty Council, so I'm familiar with the council chambers, and it's nice to be in here having the familiarity of my first meeting, so kia ora.
You're welcome. Now just moving on, apologies. I'd just like to call for any apologies. I will just note then that Councillor Taylor is appearing by Zoom, and he will need to leave the meeting between 10:30 and 11. So I'll move that we accept the apologies. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Schooler. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Okay, we move to the public forum, and I would like to invite Barry Scott up. He's going to talk on the establishment of a trial community committee. So welcome, Barry. You have 5 minutes to speak, and there's time for questions included in that. So the floor is yours.
Right, thank you. I don't intend to read out my written submission. I sent you a copy. I trust you to have read it. After all, it's part of your job. But I'll reiterate the message. As part of your election campaigns, every one of you promised that if you were elected, you would engage with the community. Many residents took that to mean that you would talk with us, not at us. That you would pay attention to what we had to say about our needs and preferences and approach decision-making with an open mind. These were things the commissioners failed to do, and their failure seriously damaged the community's trust and confidence in the council. Now, having got to this meeting a little early, I got to reading this huge agenda that you always have to plough your way through. And if you go to page 132, which I've just browsed through, you'll see an interesting piece there about trust and confidence. It's crucial. I mean, it says in this that through for the past, our current level of trust and confidence, according to a public survey or resident survey, has remained the same as it was for the previous 3 years. It says there is an indication, this is page 132, paragraph 16, there is an indication that residents feel that their concerns are not being heard and that decisions are being made without adequate consultation or transparency. It goes on in paragraph 17 to say, despite the negative views, there is some hope, and I share that hope myself, that the new council members will be able to improve the situation. Trust and confidence is crucial if we're going to get anywhere. We have to have the community behind us. Residents are cautiously optimistic and are looking forward to seeing concrete actions. Keep that one in mind, that demonstrate a commitment to better governance and community engagement. So that's pretty much what I'm saying. Back in 2021, prior to the representation review, I had a meeting with Commissioner Tully at which I made a case for the inclusion of community boards in our governance system. Commissioner Tully made it quite clear to me that she wasn't interested in establishing community boards. In 2023, John Robson and I approached the commissioners with a request for community forums to be established. They're another version of community committees. Another no. Commissioner Tully said the forums would place too great a burden on the council's resources. I've explained in my submission, I believe that that would not be the case. The commissioners weren't going to open a door that might allow the community to play a meaningful part in the decision-making process. You, our democratically elected representatives, have come into office with decent intentions and decent motives, as that's evidenced by your promise to engage with the community. I'm asking you to keep that promise by establishing community committees and getting on with the job straight away by starting up a joint Papamoa-Arataki trial. If I had to use a slogan for my campaign, I might get real corny and use "Make the Tauranga City Council Great Again." But but I won't. Because that's what our great city needs, a great council. You have the qualities that are needed to make this happen, and you won't be on your own. There are scores of local people out there waiting to be invited to help. My written submission was pretty long, had a lot of information, but I'm a bit like that. I'll do my best to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, certainly, as you highlighted to us, trust and confidence is a big thing, and we do need to take the community with us in our endeavours. I certainly do know that this is a new group of people, different to the previous councils and the commission, and we have made, I believe, already a material effort to engage and communicate and consult, and probably very well evidenced, I think, by the way we are trying to go about the current annual plan consultation, and the local water's done well. Certainly, so we're making ourselves available, and the uptake and how many people are actually coming yet, probably, we're not maybe seeing the numbers that we'd love to, but we are going to keep making the effort, and whatever happens in this initial process, I think it is a start of our ongoing communication with the community. So a really interesting topic. Really appreciate the time and effort you put into it, and open it to the table for questions, and encourage members to ask questions of Barry while he's here. Deputy Mayor, can't call him Deputy Mayor. Cheapest, I'll be gone out of the seat in no time. The Mayor.
Thank you very much for your presentation and your submission. Look, I believe that we have made a big change in this council about getting out and consulting with the community. We have already gone out with a number of surveys, including the Memorial Park one. We are around the community at various events, and right now, this month, we have about 20 odd, opportunities to connect with the community over the annual plan. So my question is, how would a community committee do a better job than us interacting directly with our people?
I don't think that the term better job is correct. It would do a collateral job, and more at grassroots level. I find, for me, looking at the annual plan is a bewildering set of facts and so on. But as Steve knows, as Rick knows, we were successful in doing something at grassroots level lately, and that's the shelter that was constructed on Gordon Spratt Reserve. And I'm talking more about grassroots level stuff. People do get bewildered by all the numbers and details in annual plans and water done well and so on. They're confusing matters, but what we're mostly concerned about, or not mostly, what we're primarily concerned about perhaps is parking in our streets, our parks, various things at a lower level. And community committees generally, from the information I provided, deal with things that are at the $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 level, but that affect our everyday life. When we go out to the shops or go down to the doctor, we see things, and so it's a little. You're doing well, I think, very well at the upper level, but I think there are improvements needed, and some of that comes from my own experience with the shelter project at Gordon Spratt. So I'm talking of collateral, not better job. The council's doing a good job at the top level, and community committees won't help at that level, but they will do a collateral job and they'll form a collaborative setup with the council, the community working with the council, again referring to the one we did. We had input from builders, from designers, working with the council kind of hand in hand, or council staff hand in hand.
I just want to clarify the Gordon Spratt Reserve, is that the Alice Johnson Pavilion that you're talking about?
I know
No.
nothing quite as grand as that. That would be
Okay.
council level. We saw a need for shelter in the parks, apart from the shade sails which go over equipment and so on. So we went to the council and said, what about building a wooden structure, 8 by 4 meters and so on, something so that, and I'd talked with mothers in the park, spent time talking, find out what they wanted. And they said, hey, we'd like a table and we'd like something that's all weather, something a bit bigger. So I went to the council, spoke, and they pointed out the difficulties with public liability, namely, if we wanted to build something on council land, then we straight away run into problems. So we created a different scheme. We said, okay, we'll give you an IKEA kit set. We'll build the roof, we'll provide all the screens, we'll do the poles, we'll do the footings for the poles. We'll deliver it to you on site. You build a concrete pad, and it's just like an IKEA thing. You build it. We resolved all the liability problems, and the job was done. It took us a couple of days to put together the structure, and the time for the council was in making the concrete pad and getting somebody in to build it. I think probably overall we had a lot of extra run-on costs because in council time, because it was a new thing, so we need to involve them. But probably the structure was built at half it would be if you contracted it out. I've been down.
Excuse me, Barry, just aware we're going a little bit over time. I don't want to pressure you, but we're just getting into a bit of detail there.
I'm getting a plug in for our shelters
Yeah.
because we're going to do another one.
But we'll try and keep today at the high
Thank you.
level, and then I'm sure if anything comes of this, there'll be plenty of chance to get into the detail. We have taken a bit of time on this. It is an interesting topic. I saw Councillor Morris raise his hand, so one more question from you, Councillor Morris, and
Thank you,
we'll-
Mr.
thank you,
Chair.
Barry.
And I think that's the exchange is a great example of why community committees are perhaps needed, because Barry, want to thank you and Rotary for the work there to get that established. When I'm down at the Gordon Spratt Reserve, I notice that it's well utilised by families getting out of the hot Papamoa sun over the summer and being able to enjoy being outdoors with their kids. It's a great asset to the community and grassroots led. If this committee was of a view to have a workshop in which we would look to formalise some arrangements about what a community committee may look like, where we could trial it, Papamoa is the example you've mentioned, what the scope of it would be, would you be happy to participate in a workshop with members of the committee at that? Okay. Supplementary to that, Mr. Chair, I just wonder through you whether this can be an item for an upcoming workshop where outside of the representation review, which is a bigger item, and again, it's closer to the 2028 election, where we look at the idea of community committees and further engagement at, as I like Barry has said, the grassroots level. We in governance are often accused of getting into the weeds, but I'm can now, from now on, adopt Barry's terminology of getting into the grassroots level.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. I personally, from my point of view, I think, a workshop on this and understanding more about how these things work and what benefit they may or may not be to us. I'm sure there'll be pros and cons, but we've seen in previous workshops, we have got through some pretty good information and certainly been a good addition to our knowledge of local government. So, yeah, personally, yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I noticed the General Manager to your right busily writing down a note. I'm just wondering how can we create an action or give life to the suggestion around a workshop, perhaps through you, Mr. Chair, to the General Manager.
Yes, exactly right. I was just making a note. We'll take an action away to connect with Barry and yourself, Councillor Morris, in terms of exactly what you're trying to achieve and come up with a plan for a first trial workshop, if you like.
Thank you.
a big decision being made. If everyone's happy, we're happy to take that away. Thank you. Thank you very much, Barry.
Thank you for your time.
I'd now like to call up, continuing the public forum, Deborah Turner, and she is going to speak to us on bus stops and road safety. So welcome, Deborah, and you've got 5 minutes to speak, including time for questions. Thank you.
My name is Debs. I'm here because I care about the people, the bus drivers, our bus service, and the safety of our people. The Mount Bus Stop needs somewhere for buses to park, as there has been a big increase in school buses and other buses using the bus stops down the Mount, including Pilot Bay, Hot Pools. Don't want them parking outside the Hot Pool. But it blocks the view from the bus coming. Bus 21 needs a bus stop near the Mount, as sometimes it can be parked there for more than 10 minutes. And they have a break there, and then when you got the cruise ships coming in, it can take over 10 minutes to load a bus. So they need, I was thinking maybe if you took that bike stand away from off the main road there and turned it into a bus stop, just a temporary bus stop where buses can park there if they're early. Quite often the number 5 is early. They can be 10 minutes early. They can park there without using up parking, because there's only enough room for one bus to park. But in the bus stop at the Mount, you have to go through the CAF. A lot of bus drivers complain it's dangerous as. So if a bus was to hit a car, whose responsibility is it? Is it theirs or it's yours? Because you need to be responsibility and make it safer for the bus drivers to get out of that bus stop. And we need a sign at all the bus stops saying to wave to stop the bus, because there's a little sticker. No one can see the sticker, but the bus stops need a sign to say wave out to the buses. And the bus 21 used to stop outside the cafeteria, just near the hot pools there, but they've turned into a loading zone, and a lot of elderly people cannot walk that far to the hot pools. A lot of people go to the hot pools, but it's just too far for them to walk back from Commons Ave up to the hot pools, when we could be looking at a closer stop, because a lot of cars park in that loading zone. I have been asking for a bus shelter over the road from me, but I was told the power line was too low. But there's plenty of power lines that are low, like Bayfair is low, and they have a bus shelter underneath. There's a lot of people wait there, and there's no bus shelter, no seat. Bay Park has no bus stop. The Domain has no bus stop. Why do we need a tattoo place on the main beach when it could be better used in a bus stop or even parking? I don't see the point, because that is the most busiest part of the Mount. Why would you have a tattoo place there when they could park down the road, down the beachfront more, where it's not so busy? Papamoa Plaza has room for one bus stop. So they have 1, 2, 3, they have about 5 or 6 buses going through there. Grayson has room for one bus stop, one bus. And they have heaps of buses going through. Papamoa needs to park and ride, so you don't have to travel. So buses don't have to travel, not in service. Christchurch has awesome bus service. Their bus parks is out of town, where there's more room for buses to park and have less bus parking in the city. You wouldn't need so much city parking for the buses if they stopped out of their towns.
I did just 1 more minute, if you can get through and
I haven't
wrap
finished.
up.
I'll just do the
I
final.
don't want to
part.
rush you too much, but
Oh,
work through.
and so the 17th Avenue road is dangerous down by the village. I nearly got knocked over there a couple of weeks ago because of it's a blind corner. So you don't see the cars actually coming to, it's too late. And sometimes they speed. It's actually busier than what you think it is. And the Papamoa Plaza, that roundabout there is so dangerous to cross. You get halfway across the road and cars come in. Sometimes you gotta make a quick, fast decision or get hit. I haven't done all that, I can finish off. I believe by listening to the passengers, bus drivers, respecting the elderly and disabled and the children, we will have an awesome bus service which more people will be able to catch the bus with less stress for the passengers plus the drivers. I'm so passionate about improving that bus service. A couple of weeks ago, elderly man fell at the bus stop, not his fault. It was the bus stop's fault.
Okay, hey, thank you very
Yeah.
much. Are we happy to wind it up there? And
Yeah.
we've stuck a little bit
I
over
spoke
time,
as-
but no, certainly.
Spoke as fast as I could.
No, you did really well.
Yeah.
And yeah, really just want to say thank you for bringing your concerns to us and some suggestions on how things can be done better. So I'll just quickly open up if there are any questions. Councillor Crowther, a passionate public transport man.
Yeah, thank you, Deb. And in future, you might also think about going to the joint Tauranga Western Bay of Plenty Transport
yeah.
Committee as well.
Yeah, I've done that.
Depending on the
I do
on the
that.
things. Quick question, because I was frantically trying to open up the Bay Bus website and it's not opening up correctly. So I've looked on my phone. It shows that there's a stop on Adams Ave by the hot pools, but are you suggesting that at a practical level, the buses are not stopping there? They just go from Commons?
The
from
21
Pacific?
goes down Marine Parade. It goes a different way. It goes down Marine Parade and then turns onto Adams and then goes down the main road. And then goes down, it goes a different way than the number 5.
Yeah, so it doesn't stop down near the pool?
No, there's no bus stop near the hot pools of 21. The number 5 will stop there.
Yeah, okay, I'll follow up with that, thank you.
Yeah.
If there's
I've
no
got
more
a question for
questions.
Steve. Steve, would you be interested in looking at doing a park and ride at Papamoa East? Since
Just
you're out there?
one thing on this, just to keep things a little bit in line, probably not a time for
Oh.
questions to
Oh,
us,
yeah,
but
yeah.
certainly that's something I'd encourage you to bring up with Councillor Morris at a later date, but we won't take up any more
Yeah.
of the meeting time today. If there's no more questions, I'd just like to really thank you for your time. I note that Mike Seaborn, the head of transport, is in the room and has also heard your discussions, so we can pass those on and let you know that those have been heard. So thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, thank you.
Just moving on now to item 4, acceptance of late items. There are no late items. And item 5 as well, confidential business to be transferred into the open. There is none. And similarly, item 6, change in the order of business. There is no change in the order of business. So we're moving right along. To item 7, which is confirmation of the minutes. I ask if there are any corrections to the minutes. Deputy Mayor?
I'm not correct in the minutes, but the question is, we've got a couple of actions that are in the minutes, but there doesn't seem to be a process that those actions come forward as a action schedule. And I would like to propose that at the beginning of every meeting that we do have an action schedule, and we can see that those actions have been completed or are still in progress, please. So is that something we can bring in, please?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. That actions from the last meeting did actually get circulated to staff, I want to say 5 days ago. So it's just formalising that formal response and getting it to come back to the start of the meeting. So yes, we can do that.
And I think even if we haven't got actions from a previous meeting, if we just make it a standard part of every meeting for the delivery committee at least, that would be really appreciated, please. And from an accountability perspective, where does that sit? Is that clear?
We're working with a process across council and the committees to have a regular action report. So we'd send that out to general managers to update, and then we'd bring that back to the committee.
I do think that's a good and a timely way at these meetings to make sure we, kept aware of things that have come up in the past that we need followed up or actioned. I think it's a really good suggestion. Thank you.
If I may, just as a supplementary, there were a couple of actions from last year's Accountability Performance Committee that I think are just sitting in an action schedule. So if they could be added to the one for the next meeting, that would be appreciated, please.
Yep, they're being incorporated.
Excellent. So if there's no further discussion or corrections to the minutes, I just ask for a mover and a seconder to confirm the minutes. Deputy Mayor move, seconded Councillor Roseboom. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. Keep my speaker on. Item 8, declaration of conflicts of interest. Call for any declarations of a conflict of interest. There being none, we will move on. And heading into the business of the day. Beginning with item 9.1 is the Film Bay of Plenty update. Ask Lisa Gilmore and I believe Gareth will be involved, and actually Jade Kent, Film Bay of Plenty Office Executive. Thank you. Welcome.
The chair will just table the report as read and hand over to Jade to make a short presentation. I think she's got a couple of videos we're going to attempt to play. So fingers crossed.
Across the technology works. Oh, get that right. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Jade Tokoingoa. I'm the manager of Film Bay of Plenty and the co-chair of the Regional Film Offices of New Zealand. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and for your ongoing support. First off, who is Film Bay of Plenty? For those of you who don't know, Film Bay of Plenty is the Bay's only agency advocating for and enabling screen productions. We don't make films, we attract them, support local creatives and grow the sector. Our team consists of 2 part-time contractors, myself and one other, and we're not funded by the New Zealand Film Commission. Our funding comes from local councils like yourself, EDAs and community grants. Hopefully our technology will play. So the first up, you're going to see a teaser for Happiness, which is set in Tauranga but filmed in Auckland. And the next piece is a local person that we supported to go on to production. Hopefully our technology will play. So the first up, you're going to see a teaser for Happiness, which is set in Tauranga but filmed in Auckland. And the next piece is a local person that we supported to go on to production.
No, he doesn't remember the two.
Our technology will play. So the first up, you're going to see a teaser for Happiness, which is set in Tauranga but filmed in Auckland.
Laying down some tracks there. I don't know what's happened. It's looping back on itself. So we will have a quick chat. We had a quick attempt at resetting that, eh?
I can carry on while we're waiting for that, if you like. Yeah. In this financial year, your investment has supported 14 plus national and international productions. It's created local jobs with productions like Pakeha, which you'll see shortly, Atara Productions and Clockwork Films. It also has helped to promote the region via RFONs, which is the Regional Film Office of New Zealand, that acronym, and also the New Zealand Film Commission Networks and International Scouts. With our support, Tauranga City Council has launched Film App, a purpose-built tool to manage film permits and measure local impact. In just months, it's processed 140,000 in production spend with an approximate or an estimated return on investment of about 84,000 into the local businesses. However, it doesn't currently capture private land shoots. What this means is that the actual impact is greater. What is the economic value? A conservative estimate is a crew of 70 can inject 30,000 per day locally through a spend on accommodation, transport and suppliers. a single production like Happiness, which you'll see again shortly, could have injected $2 million directly into the Tauranga CBD had it filmed here. Our positive momentum moving forward, the government has confirmed the screen production rebate, which gives producers and confidence and keeps New Zealand globally competitive. Looking ahead, we're exploring film tourism. A good example of that, this current example of that, is the Minecraft movie. I'm not a Minecraft person, but lots of people are. But Tourism New Zealand launched Aotearoa as the first fully playable destination on Minecraft in partnership with Warner Brothers and local iwi. Next notes. This is a great example of how screen content drives destination awareness and long-term economic value. What's next? We're ready to scale up, attract more productions, build careers and strengthen Tauranga's reputation as a film-friendly city. Now I'm going to ask how our technology is going. Nope.
Still having a little bit of technical difficulty, but I suppose while we're waiting and hoping that gets resolved,
Yep.
Are there any questions from members? Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, thank you for the report and also the nice, clear and succinct way that you're meeting the KPIs. Really appreciate that clear reporting. There's been some great prospecting going on and receiving of inquiries, but I'm just wondering for the year 30th of June 25, when the report comes back over that, can we have some quantification of the direct and indirect spend in the Bay of Plenty as a result of Film Bay of Plenty's activities? That would be really helpful for me personally.
Yep.
To see, just to value for money that the city and the region is getting from the activities that Film Bay of Plenty is doing. Is that a possible thing to pull out? It's difficult, but
it's difficult, but yes, it is definitely possible. You can work on that for the end of year report.
Thank you.
No worries, thank you.
So which of you raised your hand first? But Councillor Kurak and then Councillor Baker.
Thank you. You referred to Minecraft and it being fully playable. So if you can expand on that. And then the other question is around the 3-year partnership agreement, the term of that. Is that something new, or you've had the 3-year term before, or were they just annual before that? Just some history on that.
So with Minecraft, they have the films come out and now they've created positions around New Zealand that you can go to in the actual Minecraft game that showcase the location. So I think Te Puia and Rotorua is one of them, but there's 11 different locations around New Zealand that once you're in the Minecraft game, you know it's New Zealand. So that's just a crossover between, I guess, tourism and gaming and also film, because they've gone from the film to that. And what was, sorry, the second question?
3-year term, is that new?
No, we've had a 3-year term before. It's a little bit before my time. When Film Bay of Plenty was set up 2016, the CEO there, we had a 3-year term there. And then I believe it was just before the commissioners came in, we went down to yearly. And then we didn't have funding for, I think, maybe 2 years. And then around that time I came in, and then we recently received our funding back here.
Atamari, thank you for your presentation. I did have a similar question to Steve, but my other question was, do you guys work closely with Tourism Bay of Plenty? Because it seems like there's complementary or overlapping functions that you guys provide.
Yeah, we've had multiple meetings with them around different spaces. One space in particular is our footage that we have a lot of people coming in and saying they want to see images and stuff like that. So we've got, instead of sending 2 teams out to both be shooting the same stuff but from a different angle, if we have one team doing that. We've also talked with Oscar around that crossover between promoting tourism as well as promoting it as a filming destination. As well as Rotorua and Z, we've done that similar thing. So tourism does as well. We get a little bit of pushback in that area. We haven't quite found our lane with both of us coming together. But I think something like Minecraft is a good example of how that can work. And I guess, you know, Matter with Hobbiton and all that type of thing, that once you get those two things aligned, they really have a good opportunity to create longer economic gain, just rather than just the film for the period that it's here. Does that answer the question?
Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, thanks for all your work. I know Anton did a hang of a lot to get it all going. I'm interested in this. We've got some KPIs around Tauranga. I kind of tend personally to look at it around if it helps the bay, it probably helps Tauranga, and Tauranga helps the bay. So I'm probably less worried about that specific aspect around our border, but I'm interested in who else is actually funding it. You mentioned councils and EDAs.
Yep.
Who's putting in significant funding along with TCC?
TCC is our most significant funder at this point, but we also have Opotiki, Kawerau, Whakatane, Rotorua NZ, Taupo not currently, and there's Western Bay as well. Yeah, so we've got those, and we received funding from RECT. Up until this year, we used to have Bay Trust and TECT, but due to so many applications and everyone being short on funding, we've missed out this year, but that's where our funding sits at the moment. We also go out to creative communities, so we partner with Script to Screen, which is an Auckland-based company, to help deliver training opportunities. So we apply to creative communities, we top it up, they do the bulk amount of it. Oh, excuse me. And then we're able to put on workshops within the Bay as well. So just depending if we're successful. Part of our job is writing funding to do our job, obviously. So.
Thank you. Just, oh, sorry, it's my angle. Yeah, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Jade, and really interesting and a good report. And I probably reading the report hadn't thought about it, but your connection with priority one, I would have thought from job creation, from, you know, what does Tauranga look like from an economic perspective? Is that something you work on as well?
We still have that connection with them, definitely. And the Film Bay Planning screenwriters sit with them every week, but we do regularly connect with them as well. And they managed our fund before Lisa stepped in, and it's just come back into council now. But yeah, job creation is definitely part of it.
I think just from our perspective in terms of a vibrant Tauranga, that is something that I think we also should just be, well, I will be more aware of how we actually talk about the economic side as well as the creative side of what you're achieving. So, and well done.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor and Councillor Roseboom.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the report. Much appreciated. Mine's coming from the prospect of vision. You're obviously out there trying to promote our region. Thank you very much for doing that. From companies coming here to film, can you just give us one quick, what do they love about the Bay and what can we as a region do better?
What they've loved about the Bay is the ease of doing business here. And that's the biggest one. For us, and that's probably one of our biggest seller points outside of our locations, it's the ease of permitting, it's the ease of getting access to different areas, the locations that they can go from Rotorua to Tauranga in the same day and do a set change, and whereas in, I hate to put Auckland down, but in Tamaki Makaurau or places like that, that would be a 2-day piece. So it's the ease, and because that saves on their budgets. Yeah. One thing we can do better. I would love to say introduce a filming incentive. I can say it, but so we were very successful with Taupo in doing that, which landed The Rule of Jenny Penn, which is a feature film that shot in the end of 2023, and we just did a screening of that, even though they don't have a cinema in Taupo just recently. Had the biggest turnout of cast and crew in New Zealand, even combining Auckland and Wellington together. So that community spirit for a small investment really did a lot for that sort of, for bringing it to the region. Otherwise it would have just stayed in Wellington. And the New Zealand Film Commission wanted it to shoot all in Wellington, the work that we did, and to be able to provide them with a location and a small incentive to shoot there. was what dragged it out, and they got 6 weeks of investment, which worked, or 6 weeks of filming there, which worked out to be about a $3 million investment into local community.
Just through the chair, we did look at an incentive for
Yes.
happiness and put a proposal to try and support bringing their filming to Tauranga, but that got knocked back by the commission at the time.
Yeah.
And just to follow up Councillor Kurek's question, financial year 18, 19 and 20, there was a 3-year agreement, $86,250 per annum. In 21, there was no payment. So it was only 1 year without payment. And then since then, there's been a $100,000 contribution per annum from TCC, originally via Priority 1 and now directly with a funding agreement with TCC.
Happiness would like to shoot series 2 here if we can get an incentive for it.
Excellent, a good range of questions there. So I think we'll wrap the questions up there. I'll move that we. Oh, sorry, just also an apology. We can't get the video up, but we will make a promise, and I know we've got to be careful not to make promises we can't keep, but we'll get it up on Stella for the council and people. So a little 2 1-minute videos in a councillor mayor meeting. I'm sure we can find a couple of minutes to listen up and close this out properly.
Appreciate that.
Thank you very much for your time. So I'd like to move that we, the City Delivery Committee receives the report, Film Bay of Plenty update. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morris, thank you. We'll briefly speak to it. And along the vein of Councillor Morris's discussion, I suppose, personally, I love the concept of various ways that we can encourage Greater New Zealand to come here and spend more money into this economy, and the diversity or the wide range of that, and what, not just your traditional commercial sense, but the film industry. New Zealand's got a great long history of that. So I'm from Te Aroha over the hill, and there's been a couple of series of The Gone, which is a wonderful, hopefully maybe series 3 of The Gone can jump over the hill and be on this side of the Kaimais.
It's the sad part, that one. I did a lot of work to land that here, and we actually got greenlit by the producer. And at the very last minute, the production designer said, no, I want Te Aroha. So great for Te Aroha, because small regional town that's done very well with series 2, as 1 and 2. But
great for Mount Affinity, yeah. But so personally, but on the flip side, also wanted to make sure that the money that we're spending is actually helping this economy grow and bringing that to it. So value for money and value from money well spent. So, thank you very much. Ed, does anyone? Oh, sorry. Councillor Morris, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And no, it's been great to see the work that Film Bay of Plenty's been doing over the years. And for the minutes, looking forward to those indirect and direct benefits to the Bay of Plenty region being quantified as much as able for the annual report. Sad we didn't get to see the videos today, but it's not a bad consolation prize to be able to look at Councillor Taylor on the big screen. That's not a bad consolation prize. Also, I'm not sure if it's within our remit, Mr. Chair, but in response to a 10% tariff being imposed upon New Zealand producers, perhaps the Crown might consider not subsidising Hollywood in New Zealand in response. That would be really interesting.
Councillor Morris, so I'll just open the motion up. Is there any discussion or debate? No. So we will put that to the vote. As I've said, receiving the report, the Film Bay of Plenty update. All those in favour? Against? None. The motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Item 9.2. Local Government Funding Agency Half Yearly Report 24-25. Caroline Lim and Catherine. Catherine's here, and I believe Gareth, you'll quickly introduce.
Yeah, just happy to table it as read. It's the Local Government Funding Agency's half-year report, and Carolyn and Catherine were more than capable of answering any questions you may have.
Any questions of staff? Councillor Crowther?
It talks about, in the report, and thank you very much for that. It talks about the 4 90-minute sessions for the Sustainable Finance Series. So can you just let us know how to access that? It'd be quite interesting. But the question I've got is, it also talks about in the report, the Climate Action Loan and Green, Social and Sustainable Loans, the CAL and GSS, for anyone apart from Jen who might like an acronym. So it talks about the totals for the country, but I'm just wondering, given that they're now 17% of the total loans, how much has TCC got in terms of the percentage with those sort of sustainability orientated loans? And, and have we got plans to increase that? Because I know we get a cheaper interest rate if we do.
Sheree can give you the updated information. The cheaper interest rate is quite small relative to the work involved, to just be aware.
How much? Because it's always talked about in glowing terms by others, but I'd love to know the amount.
Hi, so the lower interest rate for a green loan is 5 basis points off the margin, depending on the rating of your council. The interest rate saving for a climate action loan is 2 basis points. That's applied to your entire debt portfolio from the date that you achieve climate action loan status. So Tauranga City Council has climate action loan status. We achieved that, I'd like to say 6 months ago. So any debt that we've issued since then has had that 2 basis point discount on it. We have one green loan currently that's on the sorry about the pronunciation, Valley River Realignment Project. So LGFA were really happy with that one because it was the first in the aqua biodiversity loan category. It's quite small, it's $10 million, and we're about to do the final drawdown on that one. We've got 2 green loans for our Te Manautaki Otipapa buildings, just approved in the last couple of weeks. So I don't, off the top of my head, that amount is over $100 million on those green loans, and we'll start drawing down on those in our next debt issuance. I'm not going to do live maths and tell you the percentage of the total right now. But yeah, those numbers for us are starting to increase, and we're looking across the entire capital portfolio at the moment, and we've got live discussions with the LGFA sustainability team on several other projects and seeing how we can fit into the categories there.
Will we get that? I don't know if Te Manautaki is a whole project, green loan, or is it just for certain components of that project?
It's just for the green buildings because they've achieved the, I think it's 6 Green Star status. So we've just got the building side of it.
Deputy Mayor Schooler.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. Just, I am being pedantic, but I do need to say, just in the executive summary, you actually say that the report is a key indicator of how well it is performing, and that LGFA are working hard to ensure it conforms, but it doesn't actually say in the executive summary, and it is achieving its KPIs. So can you just confirm that, yes, they are?
Through the chair, yes, it is meeting its KPIs, and it is on track to achieve all of its KPIs.
Right, so just for us, again, education and clarity, putting that in the exec summary would be terrific. And a supplementary, and again, just again, for us and trying to help bring the people along with what we are doing in terms of the financing of the debts that we do have in Tauranga City, which often comes up. It would be terrific if you were able to give us an example of where LGFA financing, and I think the green loan was one that could just be a really specific example to say, for this loan, these were the advantages that we got because of LGFA financing. So just again, educating us, but also enabling us to share that with the people of Tauranga, because it gets into very complicated financials, but some examples if it's possible. So my question, is that possible to bring to us for next time, please?
So LGFA, apart from those green loans, it's not, when we borrow, it's not directly related to projects generally, but what we have, or what the Shareholders Council has asked, is that they set up some sort of benchmarking so that we can see how much better that interest rate is. So when LGFA first set up, there was a very marked benefit, particularly to small councils, from what they could get from the banks. So that was known, and it would just be, we've said to them, it would be good to kind of circle back on that and try to say how well are we doing? I think that's a really good question.
And Mayor Drysdale?
I just wanted to confirm, so because we've got climate action status, we get 2 basis points across all our loans, or only new loans?
It will be new borrowing. It's a refund on what we've already got, but obviously as they mature and refinance, we'll get that better.
Okay, and then the green loans, that's another, like we've got the 2 basis points and we get another 5 basis points, or total?
No, you don't stack the benefit. So the green loans are excluded from the rest of the book where you get the 2 basis point benefit.
Okay, thank you. This probably has a follow-on, I guess, but because it's on topic, you know, is LGFA playing in the right space to be giving discounts for, you know, climate action and green loans? I guess I just refer to the Reserve Bank, and they've obviously gone into a whole lot of different remits, and then the government is sort of backing them out and saying, well, actually, you just focus on what your core knitting is.
This is a really good question at some point when Mark Butch is able to come and talk to you, but what they will say, particularly in Europe, when they're trying to access offshore borrowing, there's a lot more interest around green loans, which is why we're kind of moving and also trying to support that, just as the in that credit world.
Looking around the room, no more questions to staff, so thank you very much for the report and answering the questions of council. So I'd just like to now call for a mover and a seconder. You don't need me to read out the recommendations. Everyone's clear. I have a mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Crowther, seconded Councillor Rose Boom. Councillor Crowther, would you like to speak?
I just say thank you to the staff and thanks for negotiating those loans. And I do think it adds further vindication that we did not proceed with the IFF funding for Te Manawataki, because we get that extra 5 basis points total discount. So that's a little bit more to add to the savings for the ratepayer. So I think that's a good thing.
Councillor Roseman, would you like to speak? No? Is there any, open up for any further discussion or debate? There being none, we will move to the vote. All those in favour? Against? None. That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 9.3, and for the public, I should be bringing you with us. This is on page 69, and the item is Tauranga City Council Bespoke LGFA Borrowing Covenant, S&P update on the credit rating. So inviting to the table once again, Catherine and Cherie. Yeah.
So I just thought because it's quite a big report, I just give a a couple of bullet points to introduce it. So this report presents the Local Government Funding Agency, LGFA Bespoke Covenant for Tauranga City Council. They've agreed to a 350% maximum borrowing level, but have a condition of the borrowing that council maintains debt headroom of 20%, so that the maximum planned borrowing in future would be 330%, and that within the recommendations, there is incorporation of that in our Treasury policy that we're seeking approval for. But council's current borrowing limit set in the financial strategy to the LTP is 280%. So that was a process of approving the financial strategy after the work of the LTP was completed. That 280% won't be exceeded in this annual plan. So there is time to sort of consider a maximum internal borrowing limit for council, probably even through to the next LTP. So just making you aware of that there isn't an automatic change to that financial borrowing limit of the financial strategy, and there is time to think about that. And decisions relating to local waters done well would also have an impact on kind of how that debt to revenue plays out. So that sort of information is what gets presented to you alongside expected revenue and the capital program in developing the long-term plan or future annual plans. And the report also presents a recent review of TCC by Standard & Poor's in the light of their downgrade of the institutional framework assessment for local government. So they basically have downgraded local government still at quite a strong level relative to international peers, but just saying there is such a trend towards high levels of indebtedness that we institutionally no longer sit on that top rung. And as a result of that, 18 councils were downgraded, but Tauranga was not at the time downgraded. The comment was that there was sufficient debt headroom, and that that partly reflects the regional economy is rated more strongly than our peers. But we will have the next annual review from Standard & Poor's commencing in May. Takes a few months for them to sort of review what we're doing, and we'll get an opinion at that point. We're at A+ on negative watch at present.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's good that you could give us a bit of another snapshot overview there. Any questions of staff? Out of my periphery, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, team. So just a couple of questions, and then I am going to foreshadow a slight tweak to the wording in B, which you might have seen. So and maybe yes, it is a question. So just in terms of the two ways a balanced budget can be reported, we are getting some feedback at the annual plan consultation that we're saying we're balancing the budget, but we're putting up that we've got a $61 million deficit between operational revenue and operational costs. And yes, there are explanations for that 61 million, but they are reasonably difficult for me myself to understand, let alone to portray to people who haven't perhaps got the background of information. But now we've got another way of balancing the budget. So could we get in due course a comparison of those, please?
Yes, so the condition from LGFA is based on the financial prudence regulations. So they apply across the country. So obviously they're wanting some quite easy measures, and those ones do include capital subsidies. So we don't include capital subsidies in that very strict operating cost and revenue based balanced budget that we've worked through.
Can you give an example of a capital subsidy?
So NZTA funding, renewals.
Great. Yes, no, and recognise it's just if we had both as examples, that would be great. Can I continue, Mr. Chair? So then on page 71, I think we talk about the when part of the bespoke covenant is about we have to, I think there's two interpretations. The letter says that we are not allowed to do projects that NZTA hasn't funded, but the report says we just have to report them. Can you just clarify, please, what the actual rule is?
Yes, it does seem quite tight in the covenant. We've spoken to the staff member who said they just want to be kept up to date, because we have pointed out that there were, by practice, there's a number of things that don't have NZTA funding that we do. And so they just want to be kept informed, and I imagine there would be potentially some feedback or questions that would sit around significant items of expenditure that went without capital. Yeah, so it's just, I think we will take it that we'll just keep them informed. We'll send them the attachment that we provided probably after the annual plan considerations, because this is the draft information at present, and yeah, we'll just sort of get feedback as we go. They're trying to sit around that balanced budget and just ensuring there's prudence in the way that the organisation operates, is how I'd interpret it.
I guess that throughout the financial year, if we were to go ahead with a voting project that in the plan had achieved NZTA subsidy, but then when the NLTP got approved, it lost that subsidy, it would be a double whammy to our ratio throughout the year, because you'd be incurring 100% debt on it, but you'd also lose that capital subsidy that you can count in the ratio. So that's when they'd want us to be saying, hey, we didn't get this project approved, but we're going to proceed with it, and this is what it would mean for our ratio, and these are the things that we are doing to mitigate the impact on that. So it's just that openness with them around any major changes from what we had planned.
So just in terms of the table of $13 million of projects, quite a number of projects, some quite 200,000, you're not, so we're we are working with them to be able to do those projects, but there'll be some conversations, because then these are not, this is not a $100 million project, this is some quite small ones. Is that, so that's where you're sitting?
That's correct. We'll send them through, but they're at a relatively small scale. We've already sort of said that to them, that it's a small scale, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further questions of staff? We've had 3 or 4 from the Deputy Mayor. Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to get clarity. It says in the report that Standard & Poor's noted large deficits. LGFA requires balanced budgets. I'm just struggling to understand, have they got the same information? Is this a time lag thing? How does that fit in?
I'll let Cherie give you any detail, or we can send you detail of Standard & Poor's calculations, but they're looking at deficits after capital, and they have their own kind of methodology for calculating that. LGFA is looking very strictly just at that prudence benchmark. So they're not looking in that aspect of it at the capital program as such. They're looking at our revenue against our expenditure and saying it's got to be over 100%. So they're quite different calculations for different purposes.
Second one, graph 2. Now, obviously, there's been some big changes since we last saw that graph in February. And I thought, well, we haven't really cut debt, and like on the books debt. We haven't increased revenue significantly anyway. So is this just a massive difference because it's comparing 3 waters rather than 2 waters? Or is there something else going on that I'm not picking up on? Because those numbers are all over the place, and the different years are different, all sorts of things are different.
So the main thing in here, which it is stated, hopefully somewhere in the text, is this is using if you go back to in December, the big rocks graphs that we said, okay, you've changed capital in this year, you've changed capital in the draft, and what we've done is just move those LTP projects out into later years. And some of those were things like Cameron Road. So a big part of the expenditure of Cameron Road was actually water's expenditure regarding the main. So I think off the top of my head, something around the 60 million. So if that's been moved into later years, that has a big impact in those early years because the revenue's the same, but the actual debt against those projects is not coming till later.
Still doesn't seem to tally. I mean, I'd love to, can we see that updated 10-year set of numbers? Because that's obviously what I've been requesting for some time.
So we're happy to provide the tables that sit behind the graph because that's probably
Yes,
the most
please.
useful.
Yes, that would be fantastic. Next question I had was the 55% debt headroom that now shows in 2034 for water's CCO, whatever model you're modelling that on, I'm not so worried about. But so I'd like to know how much in terms of dollar value does that represent in that financial year, and how much does the 16% for in-house, how many dollars does that represent? Like, can we have a comparison of the actual available dollars under those two different models of what we do with our waters? Because the percentage is one thing, but in a way it's kind of almost irrelevant.
I do have the dollar number, but I have to trace through my model to find it, so I can give it to you after.
I'll take the liberty of.
Yeah, we want to keep moving through if we can.
One more, I've been pretty quick. So the yeah, I'm just thinking like the water's CCO doesn't have a 20% margin. I'm just wondering, it's probably for you, Catherine, like how come we need a sort of 20% emergency margin for growth councils according to LGFA because of emergencies? And yet when you look, I've done a little bit of looking around, and you look at emergencies, they often come in the form of natural disasters. They often involve water's infrastructure quite significantly. So why would a water CCO not have to have a 20% margin on its water's debt?
The CCOs are guaranteed by the council, and I think as part of, if you choose a CCO and you are looking at how you set it up, then the expectation of what debt headroom is held within the CCO versus what would be covered with council will be valid factors to think about. That's correct. That is correct. So you may choose to say, okay, 450% is your maximum operating, but those are all decisions yet to be made once you've started to consider whether you have a CCO or in-house, and then that sort of due diligence about how you want to set it up.
Would that be the directors make that choice, or all the councils of partner councils of the CCO?
That would be a matter for the council, I would think, as part of that set up statement of intent. And
Thank you. Any further questions? We're hopefully happy to move on. Thank you very much again for the paper. And now I believe put up on above us here on screen. So I'll call for a mover and a seconder, and potentially the Deputy Mayor has just a clarity foreshadow.
I'm happy to move.
Good, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Baker.
Am I allowed to foreshadow?
Well, do it. You should have done it.
Well,
do it now.
Before I move. I haven't moved yet.
You do? Well, you actually have.
I'm just getting some support
Okay.
from my boss. Is that okay? So before I move
Would you like
it,
to move an amendment?
I'd like to. I think the wording in B is a little bit confusing, but the wording in 6 below is okay. So if we go down, we actually need to bring up 6.
Yeah.
We might as well have a quick little discussion amongst ourselves. Did you see my suggestion to your point there in terms of the language that could be used to convey you just want that message conveyed a bit more clearly?
Correct.
Is that right, Deputy Mayor?
What page are we on? Sorry, I'm lost now.
So we
71, 70.
I think we're on page 70 or 71? 70 for other councillor. Bullet point.
Yes, it's, bullet point 6 says council has received approval from LGFA for a bespoke borrowing covenant of up to 350 net debt to revenue ratio with an effective limit on 330. This lower limit reflects a condition of the covenant that council retains a minimum of 20% headroom. And I think B should be note that and then just put 6 in. So I could just read it out again. Are you typing? Oh, who's typing? It's already in the report.
Just for members of the public, we're just trying to get a bit of clarity around the wording to make it a bit more easily understandable. So, Deputy Mayor, does that reflect what we're trying to achieve here?
Yes, it does.
So now, just take a little time, especially to read that amended B, I believe it is.
Which has come from 6 below. It's exactly
Yes.
the same as wording.
It's from the report, so there won't be any issues with the language. So,
Excuse me, Chair, just for a point of clarification, in D, where it says financial prudence regulations, that is actually referencing an Act of Parliament, the Local Government Financial Reporting and Prudence Regulations Act 2014. I think we should put the complete reference in there. It's not a regulation, it's actually an Act of Parliament.
So what I would suggest is we get a mover based on what the Deputy Mayor has just proposed. Are you happy to move that, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, I am.
And then within that, do I have a seconder for that? The Mayor, Mahi Drysdale. Okay, so now we have something on the table. Is the mover, would you like to speak to this?
I'm supportive of this, supportive of the work that's been done. And I have noted in Stella that I think the wording on the Treasury policy changes for the delivery committee could be tweaked, which I think can all happen within this. But yes, I'm comfortable with this, and I think it's very positive for Tauranga City Council to have had the bespoke covenants approved, and particularly that it hasn't negatively impacted our S&P rating. So well done.
Before I go to you, just also before that, as we've just had a comment from Councillor Roseboom, so you're happy with that change to what's been put up? Good, okay.
In terms of the wording, it's not an act. It's a section under the Local Government Act. There's no actual Prudence Act.
Okay, so can we just get clarity on that first and then before we move forward?
It's called the Local Government, in brackets, Financial Reporting and Prudence, close bracket, Regulations 2014.
Councillor Roseboom, are you happy that the essence of what's been covered, so we can delete that? So we can expedite the process.
Financial reporting and prudence. regulations and then take the act out.
Take the act part out of it.
That's just councillor Rosenboom, just liking that name.
Okay, so the mover, you're happy with those changes?
Yes.
To the mayor.
Happy with that amendment there as well. I just really want to say a bit of a congratulations to the council. I think our financial prudence and a number of the decisions we've made over the last 8 months are being now reflected in outside organisations, including LGFA, including Standard and Poor's, actually taking note that we are managing the finances in a prudent way. And obviously with the Standard and Poor's, that has directly impacted on our rating not being downgraded, which is, I think just a credit to what we're doing. And I guess it's just a challenge going forward that we continue to make some of the harder decisions to ensure that we remain financially prudent, which will have a benefit, to our people and to this council going forward. So just a bit of a high five on this one. This is very positive, but we've got to keep up the good work and make sure it is great to see though people noticing some of those positive changes that we're making to the council finances.
Mr. Mayor, does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Kurak and then Councillor Crowther.
I mean, Maha, you deserve the credit. You led the charge with the balanced budget, so credit goes to you. So I think any addition to the headroom is helpful. And I particularly remember years ago when the council was investing in assets that didn't have a high other revenue component, like a sporting facility, you get revenue from the usage of that. But when you look at basic infrastructure like pipes in the ground, you need extra headroom because the revenue line is only really limited to depreciation and interest. So yeah, naturally you need a higher limit. And I remember back in the day, and Steve, I'm not sure if you're around that time, but we used to have to try and look for new revenue in terms of perhaps extra staff or whatever to try and bump up the revenue line so the rate you fell within the ratio. So having this is certainly helpful when we look at savings, particularly into the future where we start pushing up against the limit.
Crowther.
Yeah, thank you to staff and to my colleagues for getting this through. I think what's interesting to me in the context of our waters consultation is the revised set of numbers there, and looking at the implications, and especially in terms of Standard and Poor's, who still have us sort of on a bit of a orange alert status, I would say. So depending on how that all flows through, I think we've got to expect a few ups and downs. But the good thing is to see if we go ahead with 3 waters, there is plenty of room for manoeuvre. But 2 waters, by the looks of it, would be, which knowing what some of our potential partner councils are talking about, that would give significantly more room for manoeuvre, no matter what we choose to do, whether we do CCO or in-house. So I'm just mindful of those flow-on impacts. And I think it's a live conversation around all that. So thanks for the information.
Thanks for that, Councillor Crowther. Good observations. Any further discussion or debate? There being none, I put the motion, and all those in favour? Against? None. It is carried. Thank you very much. I'm just looking for a time for a wee break, but while we're on local government matters, we will move to item 9.4, and that is on page 103 of your 203-page agenda. So speaking to this, we have once again welcome up Caroline and Catherine. Was in fourth this morning, and Gareth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just do a very brief intro and then we'll take questions. So the LGFA's draft statement of intent for the financial years were 26, 27 and 28. Overall, it remains focused on continuing to deliver on its core purpose, which is about providing relatively low-cost debt to the local government sector. It's also focused very much on remaining profitable and sustainable, and also assisting councils with the water reform. Please note that with the water reform, it is more in the second and third financial years, so pretty much when the reforms have been implemented. In terms of its KPIs on pages 5 to 10 of its draft statement, it has stated 20 KPIs across 5 strategic priority areas, including having a sound best practice governance in place, and also taking a very proactive role to enhance the financial strength and depth of the local government debt market. That's, do you have anything you wish to add? No? Okay, that's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report. Any questions of staff? Councillor Couret.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just finding the page I'm referring to. That's page 104 on Stella and page 106 of the actual document. 15, paragraph 15A refers to the government's proposal to try and get councils to stick to their knitting, basically. I'm not sure where that's at in terms of changes to legislation, but it's particularly interest that it's noted there in terms of the letter of expectation. And just briefly looking through that letter, it doesn't seem to refer to it other than this paragraph 15A. And so the question is, how is that going to, how do you anticipate that's going to be reflected within the LGFA operation if the government says, okay, councils, we don't want you to borrow money to build these fancy things and we want you to stick to roads, pipes, or whatever their direction is. So is that something that LGFA will particularly put in there in terms of criteria for its lending? Is the question. How do you think it'll be delivered?
So local government, LGFA doesn't look at project-specific lending. It looks at the needs of the council. So it is the council's role to focus on its core and, operate prudently and sit within whatever the constraints are of, or the limits of that borrowing. In terms of the higher borrowing to CCOs, they look for CCOs that they have to have a council guarantee, but they have to have an independent board and kind of be set up correctly so that they are being run with a view to obtaining enough revenue to fund their expenditure. But there hasn't been, other than the green lending, there isn't really a focus on individual projects as such in that lending portfolio, but they look at the long-term plans and look at that sustainability and the financial strategy and things like that. So there's certainly been no indication that they would start to judge the capital projects of the councils.
No chance of having criteria there. You must not lend to for this fancy stuff. Yeah. It's just that when you prepare for government's reset. So that preparation is not so much been having specific criteria, but just understand how that will impact on its lending in terms of perhaps less demand from local government or borrowing around stuff. I'm just trying to establish here where that fits because it's quite significant, I thought, for them to be, as item A, prepare for that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting observation. The water reform is a first kind of look at what are your responsibilities and your core operations to deliver, safe water, meet those standards. So I imagine that's the first focus is around that.
Yeah, the tangata whenua member, Jackie Rollison-Steed.
Kia ora. Thank you, Catherine. Last week you gave me a bit of a crash course on the LGFA. I'm kind of familiar with RBNZ and all of the things at a central government level, but I was surprised how much has been done in the LGFA space. One thing that kind of struck out to me in this particular report was around the local water done well reform process. And that's pretty much a big focus for the LGFA, particularly with the financing mechanisms and the new water CCOs. What I was wondering was this reform will actually impact how water resources are governed and accessed and protected. So tangata whenua, wearing my tangata whenua portai, they kind of need to understand the implications of that as well. So just thinking about their role as kaitiaki or te mana o te wai, so impact on waterways, freshwater resources in coastal areas with cultural significance. And I note that this report is procedural, but I was wondering if any consideration for engaging in the process early or advocating for partnership arrangements that respect mana whenua status. I notice that this is, that there's going to be an and down the track, but has any thought been given for that advocation collaboration?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that a lot of work has been done by Stephen Burton and his team. And I know that one of the key focus areas is definitely that partnership with tangata whenua, and also making sure that they are at the table throughout this local water done well reform. Does that answer your question?
It does. I just note in the report that because it's a procedural report, that there isn't basically that there's an intention for subsequent engagement. But if any, like again, engaging early and then understanding what's been done to date would be quite useful for me to know.
Acknowledge and make sure it's, yeah.
Any other questions of staff? There being none. So to you both, thank you very much. And I also noticed there an attachment to the shareholders council letter. So to on your hard work too, Catherine, in that role. Right, I'll now ask for a mover and a seconder. Do I have a motion? Moved by tangata whenua Jackie Rollison-Steed and seconded by Councillor Roseboom. And now, does the mover wish to speak to the motion? You happy to speak? No. Councillor Roseboom? Okay. Is there any discussion or debate? Deputy Mayor, of course.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment and throw a bouquet to the chair of the LGFA Shareholder Council in her letter on board remuneration. And if you humour me, I will read it out because I think this really ties in with what we are talking about as elected members on board remuneration. The Chair of the Shareholder Council says the Council acknowledges the importance of LGFA directors being fairly remunerated for the work that they undertake and the risks they bear. However, we request that you do not lose sight of the element of public service that should legitimately be inputted into the remuneration calculations. We would like the 2 yearly board fees review to be underpinned by robust analysis that takes into account reasonable benchmarks. You could consider whether the time is right now to do it. So I think just that does very, I think it's a very apt and reflective and relevant clause that we will follow in other places as well. So I thank you to the chair of the Shareholder Council, Catherine.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well noticed, spotted. Any further discussion or debate? Councillor.
think there's not a lot of discussion. Just wanted the point I raised earlier around the central government's desire to somehow limit spending in some of the non-core areas. You know, I think some reference to the lending agency in terms of being potentially an avenue to ensure that local government obeys the principle that I'm not anticipating what that will be in terms of the legislative change. But if they really do desire to trim back some of the excess expenditure, this might be a vehicle in which to do it, to actually have a specific set of criteria there around what the central government is happy that the local government funding agency can do, and it could be specific in that legislation. So it's just probably a message to the central government, hey, consider this as a means to deliver it, because, you know, if you left it up to a lot of councils, and we know the attitude from a lot of the councils we've sort of heard at the local government conferences, but just snubbing the minister and you know, the aims. But you know, I think that we need to take heed of what the central government is trying to achieve and act in accordance. And if there's something that central government can do in terms of helping to deliver that sort of outcome, and if this is one opportunity, so be it.
Any further discussion? So there being none, does the mover wish to have any final words, or are we happy to progress to the vote? Thank you. So I now put the following motion as on your screens to be voted on. All those in favour? Those against? That item is carried. Thank you very much. We will take this opportunity now to have a small break. The time now is 11:09 a.m. and we will reconvene in 15 minutes.
Rightio, thank you, everybody. If we can take our seats again, and reconvene the meeting at 11:25. Next item on the agenda is the 9.5 Annual Resident Survey, Wave 3 results. And I believe we have Jeremy both and Christine's away today, but just Jeremy, so welcome. You can speak twice as much. Thank you.
Twice as much is not very much. It's not very much still. So as usual, I'll just be here to answer questions. This is self-explanatory, and we run the process, and the rest of the organisation may or may not have commentary on any outcomes, any outputs from it. I will just note that the additional questions asked for by a predecessor committee back in October or something like that, on the affordability stuff in paragraph 11 has now come through. That was asked in wave 3 and will be asked again in wave 4 and in perpetuity until you change it.
Thank you very much. And just for the members of the public, we are on page 127 of the agenda. So are there any, yes, taking that as read, and thank you for the quick intro. Any questions of staff? And Deputy Mayor, I need you to sit somewhere else.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jeremy. Just a question on background point 7, 152 surveys were undertaken. How many, can you just tell us how many it gets sent to? So what response rate we get, please?
I think it's about 3 times that they send out, 3 or 4 times that. So they send out 400 or 500, 500 or 600, and from that each time they try and get close to 150. They send the invite out, and then people get directed towards the online version, and some do it, and then there's a reminder sent out for the ones who haven't done it, and at the end of 2 rounds of that, they get within cooey of that 150 each time.
So supplementary, if I may, so do we record how consistent I think I read about 150 and I assumed it was similar people each time. Do we know how consistent, if we're doing 4 waves, how many of the 150 are in all 4, please?
None of the 150 will be in all 4. So the aim is to get 600 different people over 4 waves. So they create a group of people. We'll call it 500 for the argument. Each time from the electoral roll, they send out a letter to those 500 people saying, please, can you do our survey online? After a couple of weeks, and they'll check and see how many of those 500 have done it, and they'll send out a reminder to the remaining 390 or whatever's left, and try and get a few more. And at the end of that process, they typically get to around about 150, I think 140 that was the last time. Some might be 160, 170, with the aim over the 4 waves of getting 600 individuals involved in the survey across the year.
Sorry, I'm still not clear. So the same 600 are emailed each, so it's a random selection each time?
Selection
Okay,
each
wow.
quarter from the electoral roll.
Yes, Councillor Baker.
Kia ora, thanks. Just for clarification as well of that number. So it says that we've got a post to online method, which is cool, but is that they get delivered a letter that has the option for them to fill it out online? So we're not sending out or posting out or promoting a separate online survey for the general public to promote. We're quite intentional about the 600 from the electoral roll that we invite to participate.
Very intentional. And the intention then is to, over the period, make sure that is weighted, closely adhering to the census stats for the city. So you've got demographically sound information about community feedback. We have in the past did a parallel version of people who would like to fill it in. A previous council decided that was a good approach. The risk of that is you end up with people who are very highly council motivated, positively or negatively, which might not be as reasonable feedback as a demographically sound group. As it turned out, the numbers were pretty darn similar, but it was dropped after a while.
Sorry, supplementary question. What do you mean by demographically dispersed or just sound?
So we end up with a survey of 600 people where on average, 85% are Pākehā, 15% are Māori, 49% are female, 51% are male, all the way around. whatever those numbers are in the census, we get feedback from a cohort of people which matches that demographic.
Any further questions of Jeremy? Yes, the Deputy Mayor.
I'm sorry, so just in terms of that, is it also by region that by ward that we're getting that democratic selection? So we're getting the right numbers from each ward actually responding, or within the 600?
Yes, so I need to check with Josh on this one, who runs the process. Very much so when it was 3 wards, because that meant you got 200, 200, 200, down to 8 wards. The numbers get smaller, and we had the conversation. I don't actually remember whether we ended up going with just sticking with the 3 wards, the 3 old wards, because you get quite small sample sizes to draw any conclusions from, and the margin for error on a sample of 80 out of a ward of 20,000 is quite high. So I'd have to check that one. I can check and get back to you collectively.
I think it's important because particularly where we've got comments from that actually do mention the ward. And so it's just whether that's because they happen to be quite a number in that ward or not. It would be good to know that, please. And I think so do you double check that once you've gone down from 600 to 150, that those 150 respondents still meet the demographics of Tauranga?
Demographics quarter to quarter, there's more flexibility given to the research company on that. So each quarter on its own, it may not be perfectly demographically sound. The aim in the contract is to get 600 across the year, which is demographically sound.
And no, Councillor Crowther, just got a. Okay, yes, well, thank you very much, staff, Jeremy, and Councillor Crowther is happy to move and seconded by.
Can I move it with an amendment though?
Well, yes, you can put it to us.
So I'd like to propose that we put in an amendment, which is B, request that annual resident survey reports in future include net scores being the total of satisfied minus dissatisfied, and happy to explain my thinking there.
Based on Councillor Crowther's comments, do we have a seconder, which we will need? So Councillor Morris is happy to second the amended motion. So just yes, the substantive motion, sorry, which will include tweak.
Question. Just to clarify, I assume that is in addition to how it's already reported. Yeah.
I don't need to take anything away.
And my clarification was just to say, would we therefore do a recap, add this to previous years so we can compare that, or because I think we must have that information. Should we have it for a couple of years in comparison?
Through the chair, I mean, I'd be very happy. I'd sort of I had a quick chat to Jeremy beforehand. I'd be happy to sort of have him sort of make a recommended, timeframe to do that. I know there are LTP requirements in terms of a satisfaction score, but that only relates to the reporting on the LTP. I think speaking to the motion, maybe to sort of, answer some or clarify some points. I think having talked to some people who are in this industry who know a lot more about it than I do, the view is that it helps to sort of overcome unintended consequences, where you could, just pick an example, you could have a 40% satisfaction rating and you think, well, what's that looking like and how does it track over a period of time? So you might find that it stays 40% constant. You think, right, we're just staying the same, but it might actually be that you start off with 60% dissatisfied, and that dissatisfaction goes down to 10%, and you end up, a whole bunch of people move up to neutral, and your net score just gets better and better and better. And I think in some of the things in the survey, we're actually in that position. We're sort of almost understating the improvement that's going on. That's not always the case, of course. There'll be some, funnily enough, value for money is an area that the public aren't so happy with. So we've obviously, we've done a lot of talk there. We're obviously going to need to follow through. But in terms of other points, I think it would be really helpful to sort of tease out, the fact that we have a bunch of people out there will always be satisfied, a bunch will always be dissatisfied, but it's really good to sort of see that summation of those two and see where we're tracking in terms of that net score. So to me, it doesn't take anything away. The rest of the report can, the survey itself can stay the same. The rest of the reporting can stay the same, subject to what Jeremy and his team need to do to make it sort of display okay. But I think this is just an added bonus that to me will help many of us to just glance through and see where's that net improvement that we're looking for.
Thank you, Councillor Krause. Councillor Morris, would you like to speak now as seconder?
Yeah, I would. And I think the net favourability provides an interesting picture. And if I look at the results from the third wave, what we've actually seen is a 10-point improvement in council's reputation relative to wave 3 last year. It's quite significant. It's still underwater. It's -18, but you can see the neutrals have increased, so people are starting to think. They're less made up their mind than what they were about the Commission. Commission was heading into Donald Trump's territory with college-educated white women, interestingly enough. It's getting that unfavourable. They were -28 underwater. Donald Trump's -38, and we are currently -18. So that's tracking in the right direction. A lot of good work that we've got to do. And Mr. Scott referenced something that we could be doing to improve that further. Also want to pay some recognition to my colleagues in the way that we were engaging in this annual plan process. A lot of community meetings, a lot of one-to-ones, a lot of engagement. And I think we'll see that will have some effect going forward as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morris. Any further, Mayor Drysdale?
Yeah, I think a couple of comments. Firstly, as I always say, this is a small part, but obviously as we get further through the waves, it gets better and better with the overall more people. So look, I think the overall trends are good, and congratulate the team for that. However, there are a number of things, and I think what this does do is if you look into the detail, I'm thinking around the trust and confidence for a while, and looking at some of those verbatim comments, it is again quality of services. Again, looking at those verbatim comments, if we actually really dig down into the detail, it is some really good feedback, and I think it gives us a very good starting point for some of the things that we may want to look at. So that's really the challenge for us, is that we do look into these things. Obviously we've got to take it in what it is, and they are small sample sizes, but as we keep going forward, it is a direct comparison, and if we look at the overall report, it's good to see some of those detail. I support that second part, having those net scores. I think that will be interesting and just adds to that comparison as we go forward. But yeah, just an overall, this is what we can use to get better overall, and we've set some pretty lofty goals about being the best city in the country. And for us as governors, this is a nice little feedback tool for how we can improve and how we can build some of that confidence within the community. So that's a challenge for us going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other discussion? Just from my own point of view, it's nice to see on excuse me, page 127 or 129, depending on what you are looking at,
that there's a lot of little green arrows. I think we had a bit of discussion and debate in a previous council meeting about what we should or shouldn't be doing, and there was some talk about whether we should go back into the past and look at stuff, and there was also comment about we need to have faith and trust in what we're doing and our ability to influence and change. So it is good to see some upticks there, and a few of them obviously statistically significant, some quite big jumps. The mayor will be disappointed that overall value for money is the only one we're going down. But again, we need to trust our processes, I suppose. The outcomes are one thing. Understanding how we go about our business is probably a really important thing for us to keep in mind. It goes back to the opening karakia about using our wisdom for the best interest of this community. If there are no, or does the mover wish to close out? No further discussion. I will then put the motion to be voted on, and noting that we have added B, requests that the annual resident survey reports in future include net scores being the total of satisfied minus dissatisfied. So with that in front of us, all those in favour say aye. Against? There being none, motion is carried. Thank you. Moving right along to item 9.6. We've just snuck inside, I think, the 12 o'clock deadline for you, Barbara, but
Thank you,
welcome everyone to the table. And
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just, if you don't mind, I'm happy to.
and also just for the public, we are on page, Rick? 149 or 151. I'm not quite sure what the reference is there, but 151. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you. No, sorry about that. I think I'm happy to take the report as read. We've been through the report with you previously, or the content of the report. My apologies. I do need to be back at over the other side at 12. So I think we've got three extremely capable people here in front of you that can answer any question you can throw at them. No pressure. No pressure.
So I'll open up to questions of staff. The big hand of the mayor.
Thank you. My question is around priorities, and this map of level of service and showing where the gaps are, I think is really useful, and it directly talks to priorities because you can see where we need to build new facilities. I'm a little less clear on the renewal side of things and how we prioritise those, and I'm just interested in if you could just give us a summary of how those are prioritised, please.
Sure. So of our 120 playgrounds we have, we looked across the asset age as the initial indicator. So whether a playground has an asset that's been assessed as having 3 or less years remaining, so that could just be one piece of playground equipment, or it could be all of the items, or if it has a playground item that is more than 25 years old, just some of the pieces of equipment can be maintained for a really long time, which can be a great thing. But the reason for that was to get essentially a short list, which is still quite long, of which parks to start looking at. And then to determine the prioritisation, we looked at within kind of the buffer zone around those parks, what the demographics are, the number of properties. So for example, there's an area in Bethlehem. That's talking about the gaps. So looking at the demographics of the community and what else has happened in that area kind of in the last 5 years, and then it's been scored to help us inform. So that's an attachment. The criteria in attachment B, which is on page 165 of the agenda. The top table shows the matters that we've assessed it against. So looking at the number of residential zone properties, the deprivation score and the age of the community.
Sorry, just a follow-up. How do you then prioritise between new assets and renewals?
So that was just taking, I guess, a balanced view of, we know that we've got a lot of ageing assets that we want to take the opportunity of when they're getting near the end of their life, looking at the reserve holistically, and balancing that with slowly filling those gaps. So you could, I guess, swing the dial in favour of filling gaps or doing more renewals. But that's, yeah, where, I guess, from a desktop assessments felt like a sensible recommendation.
Rebecca?
Just throwing this out there, I don't even know where it lands. The report's cool. Thank you guys for the work that we did earlier in the week, last week or the week before, to bring this stuff to our attention. I think I've mentioned it in the prior committee that was, when the dust settles from big cool events, and it's just Tauranga left and Tauranga doing Tauranga things, it's these places that our people gather. It's these places that generate that sense of community. And when I look at that, the Future Fit conference that Sport Bay of Plenty ran, there was a conversation, just to add a little bit of context here, there was a conversation around viewing our green spaces as infrastructure and giving it the same level of credibility as a road or anything else that we do. And that resonated with me on many levels. And whilst we do need roads, because people need to get to places here, there and everywhere, it's hard to know whether, infrastructure like that or other things add the same kind of holistic value that our green spaces do. So I'm kind of wanting to know, I don't even know where this lands, but is there some other, sorry, not to trigger you, Jen, value engineering or reprioritization of something that we can do to really put this kaupapa on steroids in some way? It's not even a you fellas' job, but we ask a lot of your team, and what you guys deliver for Tauranga as a whole is massive. And I look at what you guys are having to juggle and prioritize on an Orly rag in the wider context of Tauranga's money. That it just seems like almost a little bit of a disservice to our people, because we talk about community and our people and stuff, but maybe that doesn't always reflect in the budgets. So maybe as our stand-in CE for the day, Gareth, you can make some sense of that and come back to us with something that gives us a better steer on that thinking.
Thank you, and thank you for those sentiments, and it's absolutely where we're at, and we are providing such amazing special places for our city for our community to be a community. Something that we've been talking about internally, and I think in Barbara's absence, she probably would have brought this to the table, and I think she's had some conversations with councillors around the opportunity to look at how we split the capital investment going forward, so that there's ultimately 40% is set aside for community services as a whole every year within the capital program, and 30% of that is really what spaces and places do. So moving forward, it's showing that the ratio and the importance that we put on our open space network, and how we can deliver what we need to for the city on an ongoing basis.
Cool. No, thank you. Thank you for that. The other thought I had was, do we go out, and not to cannibalize private investment opportunities with other needs and stuff that are happening within the city, but have we thought about putting tono out to businesses and stuff to kind of collaborate on projects like this? Because people love having their plaques there on a bench or a swing or a slide or whatever that may be. Maybe there's a cool opportunity for some philanthropic investment in this space.
Through the chair, I know that historically we have had at TCC programs along those lines, where there's actually been sort of dedicated resource to go out and seek contributions from local businesses, either financial or materials or in-kind contributions. That program ceased sort of 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know the details of exactly why that ceased. I think it was maybe that the effort that we were putting in wasn't necessarily being rewarded in the way that we had set the program up to do so. Certainly for the major play spaces that we're looking to deliver through this program, one of the things that we do is go to charitable funders to look for contributions. The gaming trusts in particular tend to like investing in these kind of things. So where we can look to provide that value for money or added value contribution from external parties, we certainly try and pursue those. But there, as I say, there isn't a developed program at the moment to seek contributions from businesses.
Just through the chair, the most recent example of where that has been done was the playground over on the Mount Boardwalk from the Cenotaph all the way down to Ocean Beach Road. That was funded by the Port of Tauranga. So where obvious opportunities do present themselves, staff definitely look at it, but like Ross said, there's not a dedicated program to seek out those opportunities at the moment.
For the Crowther.
For the report. I just had a question in terms of when the engagement happens. One thing I've noticed with some children in areas I'm familiar with, when playground equipment gets upgraded or replaced, sometimes there's a bit of a, oh, where's my favourite thing gone? When you engage, do you clearly articulate, not that I'm thinking to be directly to the children necessarily, but to whoever in the community you're engaging with around what existing equipment, doesn't meet health and safety requirements, it has to go, what things are not cost effective to keep there? I'm just wondering, do we have a middle ground that we're missing, which is instead of saying, and I'm thinking of, say, an example, Lees Park is on the list. So let's say, I can't remember, a few years ago, council stuck a bit of extra equipment in there. It was really popular, so more people came to the park. It didn't really change the face of the park. I presume it was pretty cost effective. So when you go back to it, is that an option to sort of say to the community, do you want a full makeover? Do you want, a cheaper one, which means we'll leave a bit more space for someone in Welcome Bay or wherever to get an upgrade there this financial year? How do you articulate? I know it's a bit of a big question, but how do you kind of frame up so you present local people with a chance to say, well, actually, we're not that dissatisfied, but we really think this thing's a bit scungy. We want you to replace that and put something else there.
So we absolutely try and make sure that we hit it in the right way for what we're needing to achieve in the budget that we've got in the community and what we know about that space already. It definitely is a good idea to make sure that the community know what needs to come out, because of the point that you've raised that does come up. So we try to make sure that that's addressed. I guess we, in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've historically said, do you agree that we should be upgrading to this level or should it go somewhere else? But generally that theme would come through by default if that's where the community's sitting. But before we take on the engagement, we always sit down and think about, who are our stakeholders? What are the key messages? What's the expectations that we need to manage? And what's the best way to engage with them? So if there's specific things like that we want to tease out, we will absolutely make sure that we try our best to get that information.
And probably just to add for Lees Park specifically, that the Roctopus kind of carousel there, we've assumed could stay in sight. It was only from 2012 or could be relocated, but the assumption is it would stay. So that would be kind of a two-phase engagement, that proposal. And that would say to the community, you can have option one, which would be to retain the Roctopus, which is what it's called, and relocate the playground experience elsewhere, or it'd be a local play space upgrade at Lees Park otherwise.
Other questions? A couple from just me out of general interest. So you're saying that there's 120 playgrounds, and 34 have aging assets. The plan is so 10 of those over 3 or 4 years. So I'm assuming that calculation is in line with, the expected life. But where we are at the moment, is that typical, or are we a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of having shaved in the last few years? And obviously we've been faced right now with some big decisions on what we put into the annual plan and what we don't. And you often hear it's easy to cut out a park or to get rid of something or do this. I have different sentiments and views. I don't think this council ever has a big pot of cash that's going to be free to wait for a good day to do all these nice to haves. But are we at the moment in a bit of a deficit? Or are we still pretty much business as usual in the upgrades?
We identified a couple of years ago that we had a bit of a bow wave coming of playground renewals, so needing to come up with that plan of staggering them and making sure that we don't end up with a whole lot of playgrounds at the end of their life where those assets all need replacing in 1 year. So it is important to have a staged approach to this so we don't end up with a problem, in a few years' time.
Very managed, well thought out approach. Rhetorical question, I think. No more questions? So I'm happy to, if there are none, thank you very much. Sonia, Ross and Alison for that, and I'm happy to move that as the recommendations as they are. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Crowther, thank you. Yes, just for myself, probably just carrying on from where we were. And I'd like to echo Councillor Baker's sentiment about outside of externals coming in and bringing energy and life and doing things for people we want to attract to make this grow this economy and make Tauranga a busy place in the weekends. It often falls back to what we have for our community to enjoy day in, day out. And as we saw a couple of meetings ago from the Veros people and talking about what is going to make a city attractive and what is going to make a place, make the residents or the community, I can't say residents, the community happy is amenity. It is the services. It is the what we provide for our families and creating a family-friendly environment that Tauranga people can really connect with and feel proud and be happy. And not always the young kids. Sometimes the older kids like Councillor Baker that like to have a swing or a flying fox when he gets a free chance outside of his, won't be doing that now with your blisters at the moment, but anyway, no, back to serious comment. So yeah, I'm very much in support of this. And seconder, Councillor Crowther, would you like to speak now or?
Yep, yeah, no, I think Councillor Baker hit the nail on the head. This is, grassroots community stuff that's critical to the city. I'm amazed Councillor Schuler has managed to weave in economic growth to playgrounds. That's quite an effort, I would have thought, but well done. But I do think that we've got some great facilities around the city, but if we can actually, we've got a limited budget. We always have a limited budget. All councils always have a limited budget, but if we can actually target that money well, I think this is money really, really well spent. Strongly support it, and I think the plan looks comprehensive. I think probably for me the big thing will be in terms of engagement. Don't underrate the local communities who, certainly if I speak for my neck of the woods, maybe not the kingdom of Papamoa or somewhere, but Automoto people are pretty generous, and if they know there's a funding limit around this, I think they would work with council to try and look at the most optimal implementation, and I think that's a good way to go about approaching this, is to really go in there and say we've got a bit of a tight budget. How can we use this most efficiently in your communities? And I'd encourage that. And and the Roctopus is great, by the way.
Any food? Mayor Drysdale.
Yeah, just to reiterate the sentiment, I think this is important as part of our city, and getting our people out playing is an important part of that. I guess just the challenge that we heard from Barry this morning, that, you know, they built some shelters, and if council had have contracted it, it would have been a lot more money than, you know, the way that they did it. So, you know, that is the challenge. Why is that happening, and how do we solve that? And, you know, one of the good things, I guess, about playgrounds is I was talking to a playground designer and builder the other day, and he said, right now is the best time to be building a playground because there's a lot of people desperate for work. And, you know, he was noticing it in the market that, you know, basically the cost of his materials is what some of the tenders were coming in at. And he wasn't quite sure how people were building the playgrounds for those sort of prices. So it's just that challenge again. Let's find a better way of doing things. Let's continue to keep that looking at value for money. And if we can come in under budget, it means that we can go and do a whole lot more. So that's where I'd like to see that you're doing more, because you've found cheaper and better ways to deliver these investments.
Deputy Mayor Schooler.
Thank you, Chair. And I also very strongly support playgrounds and play spaces. I really like Councillor Baker's comments that we should be viewing our green spaces as infrastructure, and I did try for my annual plan consultation to come up with something that said, look at the amount we have to spend on a road versus the amount we spend on playgrounds or skate parks. I haven't quite got there yet. I just want to say though, I think we need to do a bit more work on how we consult. And I was at the opening of the Mount Play Centre last week, which was a phenomenal event and a phenomenal space there. And I wondered if they had been consulted on the playgrounds in the Mount Arataki area. I was at, and I know it's a one person, one time survey of engagement. I was at the engagement for Mount Drury, and I don't think we did it very well. And that was elected members. Rod was there as well, because we had no, this is what you probably should be asking. I think the comment about the equipment that kids love and go back to is really relevant. I think we should have had a plan of the park, and kids could have put a sticker on which equipment they like, just to make sure that, you know, the kids were asked to draw what they like. Well, we didn't come up with many things that looked like you could actually build them. And I think we also, I would like on the website, and I'm not, you know, to say this is what we're consulting on now, that people can, I can say I'm meeting a group of mums at a clinic this week. They will be really interested in this, and I wouldn't have known how to involve them prior. So I would like to think about how we actually think about engagement at this level. To me, making a decision about the annual plan right in the middle of our consultation period seems a little bit off. I don't like that we are deciding this today, whereas I'm about tomorrow night to go out and say we're consulting on the annual plan, but we actually made a decision about things that might impact you yesterday. So I think time-wise, I would like next year, and I would like this as an action, that we do consider some of the more grassroots decisions that are made for the people of Tauranga in our consultation for next year's annual plan, because I think we want to get the people behind our decisions. We need to involve them in things that interest them. I talk to quite a lot of people in my community about waters or about the infrastructure, and they do say, Jen, you're our representative and you're better served to make those decisions. But on playgrounds, on green space, on basketball courts, on skate parks, I think we need to think about how we can actually get the people behind us, because those decisions they do want to be involved in, and let's get them involved because they do want to be involved. And a big topic and a big action, but I just think as an action I'd like to think about before the next annual plan consultation, how do we include some grassroots activities that we are truly consulting on? And how do we make sure on our website that it's obvious that these are the things that we're consulting on, and hey, this is the Mount Drury plan, and this is, please tell us which things you like or dislike, because they might get taken off otherwise.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Some very good comments there. Councillor Kurak.
That was excellent, Deputy Mayor. Some of the content of the current consultation document isn't, they don't trigger that desire to engage. And I think some of what you're talking about here, some of those more softer things, the would be grassroots, anything like that. So, whatever, but not the more. It's not boring, but less likely to trigger some engagement. Thinking, oh yes, I'll make a submission, or I'll come along to a drop-in session or whatever. So I think, definitely next year we need to look at, perhaps introducing some of those issues, or not issues, but some of the softly stuff that could inspire people to come along, because otherwise you hear about the rates increase is too high, which I agree, we all agree, and those sort of issues there. That sure you get engagement, but we hear that message, but some of the other stuff is just quite neat to touch base with our community on.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Look, I'm sensing a fairly consistent comments from everyone. So if there is nothing to the contrary to make us consider how we're going to make a decision on this, I'm happy to close out. Yes, I do agree with the sentiment as spoken. Very much support keeping the places and spaces in our parks as an active and at the front. It's easy to bury these things below other what we would consider to be more important infrastructure. And from a dollar-wise point of view, you can bring a lot of pleasure to the community with some pretty well spent money. So certainly understanding and hearing what the mayor is saying. But we do have a chance. Also, one of the councillors mentioned, the potential for the community to be involved as well in supporting. And I suppose these things are things that parks and this sort of amenity, and grandparents taking their grandkids out to play, all these things, there is an emotive connection and a feel good and a real feel good element to this. So they are in future, if we can find ways to bring the community with us in that context, I think it's great as well. And, we're making the decision today to spend some money. So I suppose what we're all hoping is that we spend it well and we get really good value from money for the people that use it from a financial perspective, but also some wonderful community outcomes. So I now put the motion to be voted on. All those in favour? Against? Being none, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Moving to now the last item on the agenda. Again, a places and spaces item, number 9.7. On your agenda, it is page 191, I believe, for those that are still with us. And I invite Anna Hancock and I believe Gareth and, hi everybody, welcome. Floor is yours.
Kia ora. I think maybe between Anna and Emily, a very quick introduction in terms of why we're here, but ultimately after some direction from yourselves in terms of a key investment in the city centre.
Thank you, Chair. So pleased to be here today to present options for the upgrade of Aspen Reserve, which is a small reserve in our city centre. We're particularly interested in this reserve because it will become a more important public green open space as the city around it develops into higher density use. Most importantly, we've got the future Ministry of Justice new courthouse development being constructed diagonally across from this reserve, and we imagine some of the groups that currently occupy the Cameron Road road reserve space will want some other green space to spill out onto, let alone some of the other offices and other new developments happening in that area. So otherwise, we'll take the report as read. Anna is here to support from the Spaces and Places project team, and I'm here to support from the broader city centre outcomes perspective.
Thank you very much. Questions of staff? Councillor Baker.
Morena kōrua. Have we thought about asking MOJ if they want a partner, considering the kind of benefits that they'll get for their staff as well as those in and around that Lincoln Courthouse?
Good question. We haven't asked them that specific question. I believe the project team has been in touch in terms of how they would imagine the green space will be used by both their staff and also other occupants of the courthouse development. We haven't gone so far as to talk to them about a partnership approach as yet.
Just for clarity, the recommendation is to support option 2, but option 2 is option 1 plus, is that right? Like, is that a premium version? So we just, okay, gotcha.
Mayor Drysdale.
Just a question on this. Have we got the skills and expertise in-house to be able to do the design of this?
Through the chair, our design team has landscape architects working within it, so we're able to do the layout of the design, we're able to select plants and things like that. The one area that we would need to go external, depending on the final design, is engineering, whether it's if we were to have create some terraces, would we need an engineer to assist us with that, with the design? Depending on what happens right at the top adjacent to the road and the entrance to the site. One of the ideas was to maybe lift it up and have a bit of a deck or something that you come on, so we might need assistance from an engineer to work out some of those details. But overall, for the landscape design, we can do that internally.
Whenua member, Jackie Rolleston-Steed.
Kia ora. Just of those recommended options, really there's 3. If you go status quo, you do nothing. If we're looking at the first 2 as being those primary options, as part of that, looking at some of the previous engagement that was done with Ngāi Tamarawaho back in 2017, they had proposed referencing Tau Matakahawai. Is that still part of the proposal within those options?
So at this stage, the thinking about the approach with the design has been very, very high level, because we didn't want to spend time designing something before we sort of had direction. We have reached out, since we wrote the report, we have reached out to the entire Otumataha Trust, as well as to Ngāi Tūkairangi, and also to the Ngāi Tamarawaho representative, and I think the report sets that out. In terms of, is the feedback that they gave back in 2017 still, do they still endorse that original feedback? They do. And the feedback that we got from the Otumataha Trust was that they were all in favour of option 2. And I guess that, that option provides a little bit more wiggle room with the budget to be able to provide for things. They talked about PO in the original design, the 2017 design, when they were referencing Tau Matakahawai. There were a few different ideas about how that could be done through the type of concrete that was used, through PO and stuff. But one small detail that I can add is in a recent conversation with one of the Ngāi Tamarawaho representatives, and to connect that, the connection to Tau Matakahawai was to use some of the wood that has been felled at Tau Matakahawai Monmouth Redoubt, use some of that wood at Aspen Reserve. So that's something that we have discussed with the project manager from Tau Matakahawai Monmouth Reserve and have agreement to do that.
But I thank you for that.
Sorry, the coughs today. Councillor Kurak.
Tēnā kōrua. Back in 2017, you mentioned, actually, Councillor Morris and myself moved and seconded the resolution to approve funding for that process, but conditional on it being a design and build contract, and it's further to Me Mahe, wanting to get a bit more value and suggesting can some of the design work be in-house. But so in 2025, is that still a feasible option in terms of just going to the market with a design brief, but about what we want to see in there according to some of the consultation, and ask the market to deliver a design and build contract?
Through the chair, that is something that we haven't yet considered, but we could consider because it is something that we do in other reserves across the city. Spaces and Places have a partnership agreement where we do some design and build contracts, and that's something that could be considered here. That was desired.
Kia ora anō. Money's tight, and you guys have had a lot of, and Gareth included, have had a lot of time, I guess, in the city centre, understanding how it works, how the people are going, how the impact of the waterfront and all these sorts of things. And I hear you when you say that, the upgrades to the reserve are going to complement the growth of the city when it happens. Perhaps if it's not an appropriate question, feel free to say so, because I don't want to put you guys under the pump or pressure in any way. But I guess with your expertise in the waterfront, would we get better value out of investing in some of the amenity gaps in the waterfront than we would out of this particular reserve? If I need to expand on that, I can, but keen to get your guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. So through you, Chair, in answer to that, we are taking the philosophy that the city centre's transformation won't just occur with one or two projects or islands of investment, and it's really important that we start to stitch these projects together and improve the full experience of people coming into our city centre. Having said that, we do understand that money is tight. We're not able to do everything all at once. So we are trying to highlight the areas where we have that kind of corresponding private investment or that corresponding uplift to make sure the public spaces around it are adequate for those new people using it. In terms of whether the investment is right in this place, we think so. We've been really deliberate to make sure that Aspen Reserve is providing a different offering than other parts of the city. So, for example, in the past, Aspen Reserve has been indicated as a spot to highlight events, for example, where perhaps with the terracing and a stage, you could attract the jazz festival events or something like that. We've understood that with the investment going into the public realm at Te Manawataki o Te Papa, for example, and the terracing being introduced or planned to be introduced into that location, that Aspen Reserve wouldn't necessarily also be activated in that same way. So that's why we've landed on these two options, which are much more of a passive upgrade, where we just want to improve the environment for people coming into the space, different from the offering which will be on that part of the waterfront.
So, sorry, supplementary question, sorry. Probably then to ask point blank if it's appropriate. The waterfront playground is receiving it's a great playground, but some of the massive feedback we're getting is that there's not enough shading. Perhaps, nice to have would be a barbecue, but also just some more seating for families. Would we be better to invest in some of those quote unquote minor upgrades versus Aspen to deliver a more fuller service there than do Aspen and miss out on some of those kind of important upgrades?
Again, good question. Probably not one. I don't think I can answer that fully for you at this stage. It's a city centre as a whole conversation. I think that we have at the moment included in the annual plan and the long-term plan budgets where we can ideally do both. So while money is tight, we have understood that we may need to go back and have some flexibility and be agile to respond to the requests of the public as to how these new spaces are developing. Yeah, and also being reminded by my Spaces and Places colleagues that more shade is going into the new playground, particularly around the amenity blocks. So that has been considered and coming on.
Yeah, and just through the chair to add, we don't want all of our offerings from a green space point of view in the city centre to be the same. We want people to get different experiences in different places, and it's the waterfront playground has definitely been designed as a destination to draw people into the city centre, and Aspen Reserve will never be that, but it is one of those passive green spaces in the city centre that is overdue a bit of attention. It does have potential septet issues from a safety and security point of view, and like Emily said, we're really conscious of improving all of our green spaces in conjunction with both public and private sector development in the city centre. So we feel like the time is right to focus on a little bit of love to that particular space.
Morris and then Councillor Crowther.
Thanks, Chair. Just on that point raised by the General Manager around the Justice Precinct, if I can call it that, and how that interfaces with the Aspen Reserve. So have you seen and liaised with the Ministry of Justice as to how their precinct is going to interface with the public realm? Because prior to a recent law change, you'd see customers and supporters of those customers sort of wearing their party dresses in public outside the current courthouse and seeking to intimidate the public. So how can we, through this project, ensure that we're not creating a space for exhibitionism?
Also a good question through you, Chair. In response, a couple of things in answer to that. So various teams are working really closely with the Ministry of Justice design team on that new building. And certainly from a public safety perspective, even without the question of dress, there is a question of people coming in and out of that building from Willow Street in greater numbers. So thinking about how will we allow people to cross safely across Willow Street? Will the footpaths be wide enough to kind of contain the people coming out from that building? Also keen to attract users of the courthouse down into the Te Manawataki o Te Papa precinct, and consider the fact that these will be 2 new civic precincts effectively in our city in 2028. Going to the matter of safety otherwise, we had some really good feedback direct from the Ministry of Justice on the design of their building and their landscaping, where they are keeping the kind of shrubbery approach to a minimum to ensure there's no kind of hidey holes for any contraband before they go through the security gates. So we would look to take a similar approach. There is real benefit in spending some money to open up the view into and down into Aspen Reserve from Willow Street, which is currently quite overgrown, you would say. We've got a beautiful Pahurakawa tree, but otherwise the trees in that location are really creating a visual impact into the space. And then I guess the combination of open seating areas where groups can be well seen, and then taking advantage of the passive surveillance we have from the nearby office building, I believe will really help.
Councillor Crowther, sorry, I lost my order. Apologies.
That's right. Yeah, I'm not sure which staff member would like to answer. It might be Gareth, or I should quote Councillor Morris, the General Manager, or the Acting Chief Financial Officer. But I'm interested in the different budgets for work in the city centre. And we got last week the, quote, city centre budget. So there's the Te Manawataki o Te Papa budget, there's the waterfront budget, so 306 million and 94.5 or whatever it is. So that's about 400 mil. Then we've got 194 mil for a city centre budget, which excludes those other 2. But I noticed that this project is not specified in there. And I guess what I'm interested in is not just the quantum of the spend in the city centre, but in terms of how these budgets are configured, whether there's a trade-off between something that happens in Aspen Reserve and something else in the places and spaces network across the wider community. And so I'm not sure who wants to handle that question.
Great. I can't comment on the full total that you've quoted there. The question that was asked and the information received was really around the transport aspects of the funding. So that includes the streetscapes work we workshopped with you last week. But in terms of the approach to city centre budgets, as I started with, we are very conscious that, as I've said many times, the upgrade or transformation of our city centre isn't just built through one museum. So we were really deliberate in planning for the long-term plan to include a range of what we're calling bulk fund budgets to cover some of the other actions specified in the City Centre Action Investment Plan, which is effectively still our North Star in terms of how the city is going to upgrade or transform as a whole. So we're currently operating, or will be after the annual plan, across 3 specific bulk fund budgets for the city centre that cover off on budgets for the cultural and historical precinct, which is a precinct specifically called out, green space and reserves. So that is to pick up the fact that to date, no other reserve spaces or reserve planning is happening in the city centre other than what's specified in the City Centre Action Investment Plan or through these budgets. And then there's the third budget, which looks to public realm and supporting sanctuary space or kind of effectively supporting the streetscape upgrade work or laneways. So what we're seeing at the moment is that there is no other planning or no other budgets for reserves within from Mars Street to 4th Ave in any other budget other than these bulk fund budgets that we have allocated to date.
Just to be clear, this is like a separate pot to the citywide, whatever you want to call it, the spaces and places, community facility type budgets. I guess the reason I'm asking is because in our annual plan consultation, we have, for OPEX, we have it framed up one way and we combine, or sorry, we don't combine, and then the other one we do combine, which I've forgotten which way around it is now, where one of them we break out city centre separately, the other one we actually merge it in with community. And I'm just wanting to make sure we're not taking something away from the suburbs budget to do this.
It shows as part of the overall community infrastructure budget, but it's separated out as we break down, but for the purposes of the whole context, it shows under community services.
And just through the chair, I guess to your part of your original question, there are always trade-offs. Yeah, everything we do is a trade-off against an opportunity somewhere else in the city. But during the process we've been through in the last 8 months and reprioritising our capital program, I think the budgets, the 3 bulk fund budgets that we had specifically available for the city centre have reduced, if not by 50%. It's probably actually quite a lot more than that. So I'm not suggesting we haven't got anything, but compared to the amount that was available to spend in the city centre prior to the start of your term, it is significantly less.
Gareth, Deputy Mayor Schooler.
Thank you, Chair. I am definitely in favour of something happening with Aspen Reserve. I worked very closely in the neighbourhood for 12 years, so it was a beautiful reserve until the aspen tree had to come down, and I have noticed it got less and less attractive to visit, and I definitely know that there were some concerns about the safety. We did try to have a board photo there once, but it didn't look very nice to have that, so we decided not to. So I'm in favour of the upgrade. I'm geographically challenged, so I can't tell you, but I think from a shade perspective, those trees are amazing, but it's probably a lunchtime destination. So I think I haven't heard anything about how to maximise the areas, because you wouldn't sit there in the middle of the summer in the sunshine. And I think you need to understand, to Councillor Baker's comment, where are we getting shade and making sure that's available. I'm a little bit nervous about gardens for garden's sake. If you've actually got, it's beautiful grass and you've got lovely trees. So to me, just more gardens is not really adding value. And I just wonder, is the objective, it seems that option 2 is, yay, we'll get people from the courthouse, but surely that's not enough, that's just a tiny little slither of who should be using the amenity. So I just don't know if the objectives haven't come out quite clearly enough. It looks as though, oh, we've got a park, we need to do something. But if we're looking for value for money, who's getting the benefit of this, and is the amount of money spent really giving them that benefit so that they will talk to their friends about how lovely that little space of green in the middle of the city was? And I'm not sure that quite comes out. And I guess the question is coming out is that, are we comfortable that that's the right amount of money to be spending for the benefits that, from the feedback which I haven't seen or haven't read about, are you comfortable that the people are going to say, yay, that was a great place to have for money to have been spent in?
I think that once the landscape architects in Space and Places have worked their magic, I think that there will be a significant improvement, and I think a wide range of people will be able to enjoy the space. We specifically had talked about the courthouse. We talked also about businesses and people coming here for their lunch breaks. We talked about, for option 2, around opportunities for activation as well. Workout groups in the city centre. If you had some terraces or some stairs that went through, you've got people using it, in the mornings before work or lunch times or the end of the day. In the past, like Emily said, the place was used for events. The Jazz Festival used to perform there. There's been other groups that used to perform there. I haven't in recent years, and maybe that's because of the changing nature of the reserve and people's feelings about safety. I'm not sure. There are, lots of plans for events in the city centre, for big events. Are there places for sort of small groups to do something? It's, not a big thing, needs big fencing and stuff. I think that there could be a lot of use in this reserve, and I think it would get much more use and be appreciated by the community.
And I see that the mayor was getting FOMO, the only one that hasn't spoken yet. So welcome the mayor to speak.
Yeah, just had a question. What I've heard today is it's something we could upgrade. I've heard security and safety issues. So my question is, by doing a little bit of gardening, cutting down some of the trees, because that seems to be, especially from Willow Street, you can't see in it very well. Some simple gardening, some tree trimming. Could we stop some of the safety problems that we're having?
I definitely think we could start off by cutting down the 2 yew trees that are at the stairs, where the stairs are. I think to remove those, we'd probably need to do some other small improvements, landscaping improvements around where those stairs are, improve seating. So that would be a bare minimum, I would think. I think that there would be opportunities that would be lost in terms of, like we've talked about, with the courthouse being there. And use of the reserve, but definitely there are some small improvements that could be made with removing those two big trees at the top.
Through the chair, if I could just add, and also in addition to the Deputy Mayor's question, staff have recommended option 2, which is to maximise the outcome of the reserve just to that point, to balance the value for money question. We feel that even if those trees were to come down, what you'll expose is some fairly unhappy entrance stairs into the space, and you'll still have those kind of barriers in terms of that welcoming sense. There isn't much of an entranceway into Aspen Reserve at the moment. So by kind of opening up that whole top terraced area and then making it much more simple with some identified seating areas, you will encourage more people to take advantage of that space. And then further to the recommendation of staff to terrace that space, all of a sudden you've created these different platforms where more and more groups will feel comfortable to be using a very small space because they're on a different level from each other. So I do think that approach will maximise the benefit to more users of Aspen.
Thank you for that. Partly answers my question, since I'm the only one that hasn't but the difference between options 1 and 2 is $220,000. And it effectively brings another access off Willow, and like you just said, improves the safety of the access into the park, and with the terracing, improves, I suppose, the movement from the top to the bottom as well. So the question I have, I suppose, is we're looking at that marginal $220,000 to get what is the absolute wish list at the moment versus the I suppose just do what we can at the moment model. But so from your point of view, that $220,000, here's your chance to tell us it's a good spend.
No small feat. I would also mention that the City Centre Action Investment Plan at the moment does indicate a spend of up to $2 million for Aspen Reserve. So we really feel like we have tried to make that value for money judgment call early on. I would just caveat this by saying this is still very high level. We've got some high level concept designs on the table, and now what we're hoping from today is a budget to work within. But I absolutely think that to maximise the improvement on Aspen Reserve, spending that additional amount to get the terrace seating in would be of benefit. I think the other question, going to the point around garden for garden's sake, we have the opportunity here to be quite deliberate about the planting plan for Aspen Reserve. It is a very different space than the waterfront will ever be, and it gives us an opportunity to consider, for example, those precedent images of trees dotted throughout the reserve, still with canopy at a higher level to make sure that the SIPTED is okay. It gives it an indication that it's a very different space, and it can create kind of a living room feel for the city centre, which will be quite different than the very highly active waterfront space, for example.
And I'd just like to add, if that's all right, the original design for this reserve that was developed back in 2017, when that got value engineered, they got it down to a price of around $500,000 in 2017. So if we were to build that now, we'd think it would be at the minimum of $1 million. So we've been very deliberate, very conscious that this council is very passionate about value for money. So we've been conscious when we've identified those two budget options. That has been a key driver in influencing those two budget sort of recommendations. We could definitely spend a lot more here if we wanted to in terms of quality of materials and so on. So while the more expensive option doesn't give us everything we've ever dreamed, it just means that we can consider the reserve in its entirety rather than doing kind of more tidy up things at the top and the bottom.
Thank you. And just one more question, if I'm allowed to ask it, and I'll say I can. From Councillor Taylor, who has had to leave us. His question was just around the vehicle access. Is that actually something that has to be, it will be incorporated into the park, or it is just something that is a space that will be there that nothing will be done with? Could you just give us a little bit of understanding and clarity around the vehicle access along the southern end?
My understanding from talking to the Wider Spaces and Places team is before the building next door that was sort of built, 2019, 2020, that what looks like a vehicle access was actually a path into the reserve. The buildings on the southern side of the reserve, there were 2 or 3 different buildings. There was access into the buildings from the reserve. There may have been like a little cafe space. That path that went down had a couple of different sort of tiers, so it sort of went down and then there was a flat area and so on. So when the new building got built, I think that the pedestrian access just sort of got smoothed out. It does look like the building makes use of that vehicle, the pedestrian access for a vehicle access, because it looks like there's a plant room right at the bottom of the building. We're not aware of any particular agreements with that building for access to the plant room. So it's a little bit of a grey space, I think.
Thank you very much. Look, I think we've all had a chance to ask some very good questions. And so thank you very much for answering those and presenting us with some good options. So I suppose I will now, personally, I'm happy to move, move as per recommended, recommendation 2. If I have a seconder, we can move on there and progress things. If none, I'll put it back to, there's a seconder for option 2? No? Councillor Curran?
Well, for a seconder, I'm happy to move an amended B to option 3, do nothing.
Seconder for option 3, do nothing? Pardon? Okay.
Quite ironic that, as I mentioned earlier on, that Councillor Morris and I moved the resolution to proceed with the project back in 2017. But, you know, a lot has moved in terms of the community's affordability, and we heard today earlier around the survey reports about how people feel about, you know, their rates and affordability. You know, from the events back on the 2nd of April, you know, the economic forecast is not looking good. You know, we're heading for further headwinds. And you look at our 10-year plan and what was adopted there, there are core infrastructure projects that need to be brought back into that 10-year plan. And that 10-year plan is absolutely unaffordable. We have all heard that through our campaign process. So we got to start kicking some projects to touch, some more discretionary projects, and we got to start somewhere. And this little one is where we can start. No one's going to really miss it. It offers a degree of service as it is, as Mayor Mahe mentioned. You know, there could be some opportunity to make it a safer place if it's a major concern. And yeah, let's talk about this at a later time where things look a bit rosier and we've got the 10-year plan in a more healthier state.
Want to get a bit of clarity. So what Councillor Kurak has proposed is not part of either of the recommendations. So can I just... Oh, sorry, hang on. Sorry, I need to read.
3.
Oh, sorry, yes, it is. No,
92.
okay, no, my apologies. Yeah. Would you like to speak or reserve? Okay, I'll open Mayor Drysdale.
Yeah, I actually support this resolution because, you know, I don't feel like this is a priority for us. I think we're trying to solve a problem that we don't really have with a little bit of gardening and possibly some tidying up. You know, with a minimal budget, we could deal with a lot of the issues. Look, it's not going to be ideal, but we're spending a huge amount of money in the CBD. We've got the waterfront, we've got Te Manuataki o Te Papa, you know, we've got Masonic Park. So, you know, there is plenty of space that people can use and will use. And this park, you know, it could be nicer. We could spend a lot of money on, but when we are trying to prioritise, I don't feel like this is top of mind as one of our major priorities of the city. And you know, I think, you know, let's spend, you know, a little bit of money to sort some of the issues that we do have, which is around that security and safety, but not do any major refurb to a project that I believe we're finding a problem to try to solve when we have a lot of other problems that in my mind are a much higher priority. So I support the option 3 as discussed.
No, and clarification.
Just, yeah, I'll just, so there's a difference between the two of you because one is spending nothing and the Mayor, I'm hearing from you that you're suggesting we spend a little bit. So we're just into a.
I'm with Mahe, yeah. So the question for clarification to staff, within existing budgets, can we do a bit of the work that the Mayor Mahe is suggesting? Yep.
But not do nothing. Yeah, I think you need to. So it is do nothing.
No,
Oh, okay.
Safety net.
Carruthers?
I support this. I do think it'd be nice to end up with a lovely little park for people to sit in lunchtime. And I guess I would suggest that in the extent of the city centre budget, I would rather compromise somewhere else in that budget, but we're not in a position to do that until we do the long-term plan reassessment, or we take this whole bigger city centre budget and have a bit of a tweak on it. And what I would like to think we could do here is to quote someone who I spoke to from a neighbouring business who said, access to Aspen Reserve is the least of our issues. It just needs a few more seats for people to sit at lunchtime and a couple of extra trees for shade in the future. And I think it does worry me a little bit in terms of gardens, not that I have any problem at all with gardens, I love them, but when TCC does gardens, that comes with OPEX, but it also comes with, and I'm mindful of Councillor Rosenblum, chemical spray use, definitely not agrochemical, is it, Martin? Because it's in the city, it's urban spray use. And I think the view from the people I've spoken to is that you have a nice vista in one direction of our old post office building. The other direction, you can see a bit of the waterfront. But most people just want to go out, have their lunch, and presumably as their numbers increase with the court development, that'll be the case. So I would like to think our staff could approach it maybe the way that Barry talked about in the public forum, where we somehow manage for just a few bucks as opposed to hundreds of thousands to put maybe 2 or 3 seats strategically located. And I can see myself looking at Google Map, a couple of locations which could be shaded, to the Deputy Mayor's point, at lunchtime, not staring into the glare of the sun, just to be very specific, and just to actually do a very low cost, which could come from existing budget. So I do support this. I think we do have to draw a line somewhere, and this seems like a really nice to have, but definitely not a must have.
Just clarification from.
Yeah, just need to clarify, like in terms of the Mayor's suggestion, that's probably an OPEX cost, whereas the options that were presented today were a capital investment. So we know we had the capital budget available. We'll need to go back and look at what OPEX is available to, service that kind of suggestion. It does also feel like, there's another version that's just landed on the table here. So I wonder whether we just need to leave this lying on the table, have a 30-minute briefing or a workshop somewhere along the way, and try and get some kind of consensus in terms of a very, very low-key intervention that is going to deal with safety and security, but not push too many buttons in terms of, upgrading the space in a way that's inconsistent with value for money, and then bring a paper back that's a little bit more realistic in terms of some form of consensus, just a suggestion.
I'm happy to move.
Get some feel from the floor as to.
I'll be happy to move that, to leave it lying on the table.
And go to a workshop, so we've got a seconder in, Councillor Baker. So there's no debate on this. I will put that motion that we leave this to lie on the table. Was moved by Mayor Drysdale and seconded by Councillor Baker. All those in favour? Aye. Against? There being none, we will leave that to lie. That's carried. We'll leave that to lie on the table until a bit more in-depth discussion and workshop can be done. Thank you very much for that, councillors. has got that comment. Yeah, that comment. Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Caroline. It's good. Saved me having to disagree with everybody. So discussion of late. No, so that brings to a close today's meeting. Thanks everyone for their engagement and participation, some good discussion, and hopefully we've made some good decisions. I would now like to ask Councillor Morris to close with a karakia.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you everybody for the contributions today. E noi tātou, let's pray. Kia tātou katoa te atawhai o tō tātou ariki a ihu karaiti me te aroha o te atua me te whiwhi na tahitanga ki te wairua tapu ake amene.
Meeting is closed at 12:50 p.m. Thank you.